all these first ring suburbs are dealing with the same thing that we're dealing here. Roads that aren't built to current standards as they are today, okay? So us here in the engineering department, the supervisory group, we basically are the trusted caretakers of the town infrastructure. As I mentioned, there's a lot in those first two slides that we are responsible for taking care of, and I think that's what our role here in this town is. And then in a major cost savings move, early in the 2000s, we as caretakers switched to what I'm going to call a design build method of construction to work on our infrastructure. And we'll discuss that in a minute, but I think it's important to bring that point up. On the next slide, we'll talk about, typical project design. So what most communities do and what we used to do is typical traditional method would be for the town to engage in either an engineer or an architectural firm, okay? And then they would come in and do the following at a fee. They would analyze a problem that's out there, whether it be a drainage or a sanitary issue, okay, a road issue, a bridge issue, whatever it may be, determine a solution for said problem. Then they would survey the area in question. They would draft up construction drawings to fix the problem. They would prepare bid documents, award that bid then to a contractor, review any submittals that come their way, and then they would manage the project, all for a fee. And that fee nowadays is roughly 20% of the project that's out there, okay? So if it's $1 million job, okay, 20% is 200 grand, okay? So that's why we switched to what I'm gonna call in the next slide is a design build, okay? So what a design build basically is, in my terms here, it says we use a design build to perform all tasks, basically what I just mentioned on a traditional format. We do all the survey work. We analyze a problem. We figure out the drawings. We do what we need to do to get the job done.
And by we, you mean in-house, and we don't.
When I say we, again, exactly, in-house, okay? Absolutely correct, supervisor, yes, okay? So we as the engineering, we as the supervisory group, okay? That's the we, okay? And then we will bid out support contracts, okay? For example, our public works contract, our concrete contract, our tree removal contract. And why do we bid those out? Because there's some equipment and personnel and licensing and certifications that we do not carry, okay? So that's why we use those contracts to support, okay? We utilize town employees and equipment from various departments to assist with construction of these projects at a significant cost savings to us. Because now, again, we're using our own personnel when we can. We buy materials direct from the supplier, again, at a significant cost. We have our own bids that we bid out for materials. We utilize the county bid for materials, and we use the state bid for materials. So whether it be asphalt, stone, concrete, pipe, you name it. So we will go directly to the supplier and basically cut out the middleman, okay? Which again, gives us a savings for our taxpayers. We also reclaim materials off of said projects at a significant cost savings. Our milling program, we retain the millings, okay? So then we recycle those millings and we get a credit for them. So basically we retain the asset in those millings. And so basically, in a nutshell, we act as a general contractor and run these projects start to finish. So, in the early 2000s, we started this method, and we're going to talk about it in a second, but I think it's important to bring that up because it's a good method where, again, we go directly to the source every opportunity we can to save dollars for what we do. So the next slide, just going to talk about what we've done over the last few years, okay? So a lot's been talked about what we need to do, but I think it's very prudent to talk about what we have done. So people do understand that we have been doing things, okay? So since 2000, we've installed over 75 miles of new ADS storm sewer. That's advanced drainage systems, what ADS stands for. Basically, it's a plastic storm sewer, okay? Which has a 100-year life to it, okay? That's ranging in size from 6-inch to 66-inch. That's a large diameter pipe we put in Dinson Street. We've done over 27 full-depth road reconstructions, which include new sanitary sewers, new storm sewers, curbing, sidewalks, aprons, full-depth asphalt, and tree planting. We've rehabilitated 5 of the 10 bridges that we own and are responsible for. That includes Central, Rhine, McNaughton, Brentwood, and Nagel. We rehabbed 5 pump stations out of 9 that we are responsible for, which includes Roycroft, Ellen, Holtz, Ryan, and Fair Elm. We've installed over 10 miles of new SDR 35. That's basically plastic sanitary sewer. Once again, that has a 100-year life to it, ranging in size from 8-inch to 24-inch. And we performed over 4,600 sanitary sewer repairs, mostly to support the consent order that we are now undergoing our 10th year on. Okay, so again, I think it's important just to give a little snapshot of what we've been doing the last, 20 some odd years. The next slide just shows real quick. I'm going to just run through them. For example, you see the picture on the left there. This is Dinson Street back before 2010. Every time we had a rain event like they're calling for in the next couple of days, 1.5 inches plus rain, the dip would flood with 10 feet of water. You see a car bopping there in the middle. That's a car that you see in the middle of that picture there. Okay, so that's where we installed that 66-inch storm sewer that I mentioned previously. And you can see a picture of that going in the ground. That neighborhood obviously no longer floods. Okay, you know, and again, it just shows pictures on it. The next slide, I'm just going to point out what you see on the picture on the right is our public works contractor loading a highway truck. Okay, so even back in 2010, we utilized in-house personnel when we can to get the job done. North Meadowbrook is the street that is off of Dingeon Street. We had 7 streets off of Dingeon, never had a piece of drainage on them, okay, because there was nowhere for that water to go. We rebuilt all those streets. This is just one of the 7. You can see the before picture on the left, the after picture on the right, okay? I think it speaks for itself when you look at that photograph, okay? Back in 2008, the next slide, you'll see Wayne Terrace. That's on the north side of town. Again, a chronic area for flooding. Okay, there's 21 feet of fall from Cleveland Drive down towards Wayne Terrace. Every time, again, we had a minimal rain event, you would have several feet of water from front door to front door on that street. We worked in conjunction with New York State DOT when they rebuilt Harlem Road, so we were able to put a trunk line in to handle the flows on that. And again, you'll see the next slide that shows us building the road, and once again, you'll see highway personnel doing the paving on that project. Okay? Next slide, a little bit more current, 2021. This is the Andrews Sanitary install. This was a large project. You'll see the bore pit that were on the side. We had a bore underneath Genesee Street at a depth of 24 feet. Okay, we had to bring in shoring, specialized equipment. This is where that public works contract comes in because we don't own that equipment, nor do we have the certifications to be down at that depth. And the next page, you'll actually see the boring machine drilling the bore for us underneath Genesee Street. And again, we use our personnel, our sewer maintenance department and our hydrant department played a major role in that project. That's a job we were talking about for several years that helped to eliminate a 97-year-old pump station on East Element. Okay, that station is now eliminated based on that project. Back in 2009, you'll see the Central Avenue Bridge rehab. Basically, that bridge was in disrepair. You can see the potholes, the pitting, the rebar was actually sticking out of the bridge deck itself. Okay, so then we engaged our public works contractor, Nichols London Moore at the time, and then we removed the deck, went back down to steel, and rebuilt it from the bottom up. Okay, and that we did internally in 2009. And that deck looks as good today as it did in 2009 when it was put on. Back in 2010, we had a major overhaul here on our campus. We're standing in the building today that was part of that overhaul. Okay, and you can see in this picture, we actually stood on the roof of Town Hall. That picture was taken from the roof of Town Hall. We had to demo the old incinerator building. We had to do all the site work, new water main, new sewer main. We had to build the new maintenance garage that was in the back next to Central Garage. I can give you a bunch of snapshots on that, but I just chose this one because again, it shows highway dump truck in the middle of that because again, we use our highway personnel to assist on that job along with our public works contractor. And it was imperative that we did that because there was nowhere for our existing personnel, our police department, our court system to park. So we had to do the site work prior to this building going up so we could make sure we could still maintain operations here on campus. Next slide, 2020. Some of you may or may not remember, we actually had a town hall meeting, so to speak, at South Line Fire Hall. We had a flooding event on Towers Boulevard that caused some headaches for some people over there. So we had a town hall that was called for at South Line. And we, as the engineers, sat on stage and we had to basically take the brunt from the homeowners about what happened there. Again, you know, it was funded then to fix that. So we engaged our public works contractor and our highway department, and we went out there and you can see the crane that we had to
Call
use.
the rough cost of this off the top of your head.
We'll get that in a second.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, okay, no
I
problem.
won't
Yep.
steal your thunder.
That's okay, no problem at all, okay? So we engaged it in there, basically that was a poor design, again, to go back to what I said earlier, a subdivision that was built without any plan review. You're not gonna build houses with inverted driveways with no storm sewers on the street. That's what happened in this case, okay? So we were able to mitigate that problem to this day. There's been, even after the major snow events that we've had, the blizzard and whatnot, that street's in good shape and you can see a picture on that. But once again, you can see the crane bringing in a large structure on that, again, utilizing our public works contractor. Next slide I have in here, once again, is one of the pump stations we rehabbed that we discussed, Union Island Station. We did that rehabilitation back in 2022. It's a station that went back to 1944. Okay, it's seen no work since 1944, so it was well over 60 years, or close to 60 years. So we needed to upgrade that station, and now we're in a much better position with bypass and whatnot at that station. And once again, that was a combined effort between our sewer maintenance department and our public works contractor. Next slide is actually Nob Hill Playground. I picked this one because, again, there is all new playgrounds in almost every one of our parks that we put in internally. What I mean by that, our parks department and our public work contractor. Yes, we brought in a certified installer to install the playground, okay, because we have to do that for legalities and whatnot. But as far as demolition, site work, drainage, all that stuff was done internally. And again, you can see the outcome on that. We did a large program back in the early 2000s with replacing all of those. Even back in 2006, the senior center parking lot was in disrepair, okay? So we engaged our guys again. You can see the before and after on that. Riddled with potholes, our seniors are walking through. You know, I believe one fell back then. We're like, we need to do something to address that. So it was a late project we did in the late fall. Again, you can see, you know, we engaged our public works contractor. You can see our concrete contractor installing the mid-island curb in there. And in the background, it's hard to tell, but you can see highways paver and highways truck because we began paving underneath the canopy that same day with the highway personnel. And another more recent job, you'll see our Straley Avenue reconstruction. Once again, you see the pink truck there. We all know the pink truck is one of our breast cancer awareness trucks at our highway department. Obviously, we use highway personnel on that, along with our two main contractors, our concrete and our public works contractor. And once again, you can see the asphalt being laid by our highway department on that. Another building that doesn't get a lot of attention, but is one of our main important buildings, is our main pump station. Mentioned that on one of the earlier slides. So all our sanitary sewer and the north side is conveyed to our main pump station. It was built in 1980. It started operation in 1980. It runs 24/7. It's been running every minute of every day since 1980. That building's starting to show some wear and tear. Again, we're approaching 40 plus years. So like anything else, if everyone owns homes and whatnot, you know, things don't last forever. So that was a major reconstruction project. We had to do one of our dressers failed. We got quotes to replace that dresser. $70,000 was the cheapest quote we got. We utilized our internal contract with CMH Company, our public works contractor. We did that for $24,000 utilizing the contract. Okay, so again, those guys are certified to do that work, and that helped the cause on that. Next slide shows our sanitary sewer lining work that we're doing. We'll talk about consent in a minute, but as we all know, we're under consent. So since 2016, this is a slide from 2017, we've been out there, we've lined over 180 miles of our sanitary sewer system, okay, at a major cost. But again, these are two contractors that we have a direct relationship with. They're both out of Boston. You know, headquarters, one is in St. Louis, one is in Chicago. These are national contractors, but again, we have a direct relationship with them. I bring this up because these guys use us as an example in North America about the cost savings you can have when you have a direct relationship with owner and contractor, and there's no middlemen or women, so to speak, in the way, okay? So that's a huge cost savings we see of 30% that other people don't have. And the last slide I have on there, just wanted to focus a little bit on our highway paving program, okay? Again, you'll see the picture there. We bring in a direct contractor with our milling contractor. In this case, it's a picture of Donegal. They're up at the county bid that we use for milling. You'll see all our trucks. We do all the cleaning, we do all the prep, we do everything else. We keep the millings, and then we get a credit from our blacktop vendor or stone vendor for said millings. And again, the last slide on the right, I want to bring up, because again, this is one of the key things with the relationship we have, okay? Clearly, that's our blue dump truck you can see with the flag on it from highway, okay? That's backed in our public works contractors paper. However, our employees are running that paper, okay? So that is a unique relationship that no one else has in this area, okay? All right, and the reason we use that paper is that paper can go 24 feet wide. Ours cannot, okay? So just the next slide, just a quick recap here. The completed projects just shown. Most of what was shown was funded through bond monies, okay? To answer your question, Brian, close to 20 million, okay? Not counting consent work. I'm talking highway side, okay? All right, so most of what you saw was funded through bonds since 2004 and forward. You know, all work was design builds. Again, like I said, do the math. 20% on 20 mil, $2 million went back in our taxpayers' pockets. Or in this case, I refer to it, went back in the ground. We were able to do more projects because of that, okay? All work was managed by either engineering or supervisory group, okay? So we can make sure things were done the way we expected them to be done out there. All north storm sewers are HDPE piping, which again has a minimum life expectancy of 100 years. And again, a properly lined sanitary sewer has been proven to extend the lifespan of that sewer for up to 100 years, okay? So again, the bond dollars we're spending, goes a long way. I just bring this next slide up because we're here for a reason. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of discrepancies, a lot of inconsistencies set out there, whether it be on social media, whether it be in this room, whether it be in other rooms. So I just want to say something real quick from my perspective. This misinformation about other people needs to stop, okay? I hope the slides that we just said shows that, okay? We are trusted caretakers of this infrastructure, this town. We've been doing our job. We've been managing it accordingly. We've been doing what we need to do for our community and our residents, okay? Engineering and supervisory, our group, our office, we're 100% nonpartisan, okay? I know our board is split now, 3 and 3. We don't care, okay? I don't care who you are, where you came from, what your politics are, what your policies are. I care about this town, I care about our infrastructure, okay? And so does my office, and so does my group, okay? And I want that to be clear, okay? We are completely trustworthy and take our responsibility seriously, okay? I'm up front of you guys today because you asked for this meeting, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm saying. We do our job to the best of our ability, okay? And I think our track record shows that, okay? We do not break any rules. We are clear and transparent on all we do, okay? Mr. Kraus can speak on this. We've gone through audits. I've been called up before in the past. I've had to talk to the Attorney General's office. What came out of that? Nothing, okay? And I bring that up because in 2014, I went through this, okay? Because of our design build. So we were forced to build South Crest. We had to bid that the way you would traditionally bid a project. We bid that out. The bids came in at $1.4 million. The board at that time, the supervisor at the time said, okay, Mark, do it your way. We built it our way for less than 900. Okay. So ever since that day, when I could show on paper, black and white, we saved 500 grand. Okay. I haven't heard anything until now. That's why I mean by this misinformation needs to stop. Okay. As mentioned, we manage all projects. So we have the answers. If you have questions, ask us. Okay. We send emails out about stuff. We don't hear responses. Okay. Again, if a problem comes out, we'll throw an email out. Previous boards, the same thing. We need to know something. Call us, contact us. We'll give you the right answers to that. Okay. So that's just my little trajectory on that. Okay. Part of the misinformation, okay, is our highway budget. So I actually have it on screen. We're going to look at it real quick. Okay. Our highway budget is comprised of about $14.5 million. Okay. That's our highway budget. We have 120,000 within that budget to buy construction materials. That is it. Okay. All right. So the first page basically breaks down, what that is. Okay. The cost on that. The next page, you're going to see that I highlighted on yellow. You're going to see stone and gravel account. We have $35,000 in. Okay. We go through on average $900,000 in stone. Okay. To support all the projects. I use that figure because that's what we spent last year on stone to support all our projects. Just a little backup information on that. The stone quarry on Como Park stopped selling stone about 5 years ago. Okay. So our backyard, our highway department is our stone quarry. All that product is trucked in the highway, and then we distribute that on all our projects, whether it be a sanitary project, a storm project, a drainage project, a parks project. It all comes out of our highway guard. Okay. So the next line you see highlighted there is called culvert and sluice pipe. That's basically buying that ADS HDPE pipe I mentioned earlier. Okay. All right. $55,000. We got 2 deliveries in today, $60,000 for 2 trailer loads. Okay. And already $5,000 in all. Okay. But we need that pipe to get going on a project so we get started. Okay. There's a blacktop line item for $85,000. Sounds like a lot. That line item only covers the patching we need to do on our receiver repairs, on some of our crossing repairs. That money doesn't go very far. The next line, next page, you're going to see personnel expenses, highway equipment, conference and parts and supplies. Okay. So again, $420,000 to buy equipment. We did a resolution at the end of last year. We got 2 new loaders coming for $419,000. Okay. Budget's gone. Okay. Parts and supplies, we got 280 in parts, okay? After the storm we had in December, we're gonna be lucky if we make that number by September, okay, the way we're looking at now. The next line, you can see labor, you can see office supplies, uniform, safety training, miscellaneous expenses, shade trees, tree removal costs, and again, these items are 2,400, 15,000, 800, 12,000, 15,000, okay? Again, yes, they're thousands of dollars, but in the grand scheme of buying materials, that's not a lot of money. But more importantly, I can't use those line items to buy materials, okay? The next slide, again, you're gonna see payroll, overtime payroll, longevity, shift differential, clothing allowance, vacation sellback, sick sellback, part-time, and on as you can see here. Again, that is to cover our employees within the department. Next slide, you see labor general, okay? Again, this is a breakdown of that. Then you see salt. Yeah, we have $500,000 in salt, okay? But again, we need to keep our roads safe for our traveling public, okay? On average, we bid $10,000, 10,000 ton. That is what $500,000 buys. Luckily, we're a little light this year. There's years we've been at 13, 14,000. There's years we've been at 7,000. So again, 500,000 is the average number that we spend a year on salt. The next page, again, you will see labor again. That's just personnel costs in there, $6,000. The next slide, you will see two more highlighted items. Again, we have another labor line. We have gas and oil. Well, we got to put gas and oil in our vehicles to keep them on the road. Then you'll see another stone account for $15,000 and receiver and pipe account for $30,000. Then you see another blacktop account for 400 grand. Yeah, it's a lot of money. That's a blacktop account we use to, again, patch our trenches when we put pipe in the ground, do any milling, small milling, and pothole patching. We're gonna start that next week. The plant opened yesterday. This week's a little bad weather-wise. We're gonna start that up next week. That 400 grand's committed to operational stuff when it comes to patching what's out there. Okay, again, on 194 miles of roads, we have a lot of patching to do, as you can imagine. We have a small creek maintenance account of 4 grand, okay? And then the last page, again, you'll see more allocations for personnel, Social Security, FLICA, Medicaid, and whatnot. Those are internal costs that we have to have when we have force in there. And then the last page, you will see that basically shows, again, accounting things that Brian has to do with interest and whatnot for bonds and things that we have out there. Okay, so the next slide basically, again, breaks it down into what our highway budget is. Personnel services, equipment, contractual, cost allocations, employee benefits, and interfund transfers. So again, I want to go back to the contractual line. You'll see 1.9 million. Well, we just discussed what that contractual is. 120,000 is all we have to buy materials, okay? And on average, since 2019 to last year, a 5-year window, materials have gone up on average 37 to 39%, okay? Where our budget has not risen. So again, it's just an important point to bring up. Now, the next slide I think is also very important because a lot of talk has been about highway fund balance. Can we move money out of highway fund balance? Can we do some of these drainage or paving projects out of highway fund balance? And the answer is no, and here's the reason why. So this is basically how the budget is built. So this slide shows, again, we have ways of getting that $14.5 million. It comes through property taxes and sales tax revenue, okay? So prior to 2023, the average draw from real property taxes, what we as citizens pay, was about 2.8, 2.9, 3.3, 3.2 on the other end, or 2.3 in that end. A decision was made in 2023 to reduce the highway budget by 85%. On your tax bills, everyone that gets tax bills from this town will see on there, black and white, minus 85%. The budget was lowered by 85% on tax base, okay? So we had to find that money from somewhere. If you go to the next slide, you will see that in 2023 and 2024, significant monies were moved from highway fund balance and put in the operational budget, okay? So in 2023, a little over 2 million was put in the operational budget. In 2024, 2.7 million was put in the operational budget. So what does that mean? That means this year, when this board prepares this budget, we're gonna have to take at least 2.8 million out of highway fund balance, or we have to raise taxes on our residents, okay? So at some point, our highway fund balance will be empty. So there's no way for us to take any of that highway fund balance, which is minimal. I'll defer to Brian Kraus on that, to move on any project that we're gonna talk about moving forward. But I thought it was important to get the backdrop of what's happening with highway fund balance, okay? Now we're gonna get into some of our proposed projects that we have on the board, okay? So these are just quick snapshots. You know, I blacked out names because I don't want to give false hope to some residents, but you will see that is the condition of one of our major trunk sewers. Again, it was put in 1959, a corrugated metal system. Life of a corrugated metal pipe is 40 years. It was due in 1999, okay? All right, we're 25 years after, okay? All right, so the next few slides, you can just scroll through them real quick. This kind of shows the condition of that system, okay? The bottom's completely gone, it's caved in in spots. There's only so much we can do to try to bring that system back to life, so to speak. Okay, there's a complete collapse in there. That's why you see water laying in that pipe, okay? So that's something that we need to address. That is on our proposed drainage list, okay? A couple of snapshots show some of the existing receivers. Those two receivers there go back to exactly what it said. They were put in 1928. Okay, all right. That is a clay tile storm system that is underneath a concrete road base that was put in 1929. I'm sorry, 1928. So those are a couple other snapshots of, you know, newer receivers. What I mean by newer, they were put in the 50s, not in the 20s. Okay, but as you can tell by the pictures, clearly those need attention as well. Okay. Next slide shows our sanitary sewer system. I can go on and on about that. But most important thing we need to understand about lining a sanitary system is the liner is only as good as the hose pipe that it goes into. Okay, if that hose pipe is still compromised, if that hose pipe still has deficiencies, yeah, it'll seal that for a point, but you're not going to get that full life of up to 100 years out of that pipe. And that's the whole point of doing this, doing our due diligence, making sure that we're going to get the best longevity out of that. So the picture on the left goes to show you a reduction in there. So that is a 10-inch pipe that's reduced down to an 8 that needs to be removed before we can line it, so we can line the 10-inch pipe. And the other picture there just shows a bad breaking connection. What I mean by that, they literally took a hammer, broke the pipe, tied in the lateral for the residents on there. That needs to be fixed and sealed before we line the hose pipe. So next slide. A lot of questions have been asked about the consent order. So we've talked about, you know, what that is. Basically, we are under a court order with New York State DEC to abate our sanitary sewer overflows during wet weather events. This goes back to 2016. We've gone back and forth, actually 2014. We've gone back and forth with them to actually sign a court order document, you know, that locks us into what we need to do. If you look at the next page, a lot of questions have been, you know, how much have we spent? What have we spent? Well, that goes to show right there. So basically we have, you know, 9 phases of lining. Okay. We are on number 9 right now. We are at the end of that. Number 7, 8, 9 are still open projects. Okay. But the lining companies are in town. We are lining. Okay. We still have work to do on those 3, but the first 6 are completed. The last 3 will be completed, you know, if we get funding to complete them. That is a tune of about $41 million. Okay. Luckily, we had a lot of substantial grant money to support these things. The next section there, the sanitary sewer manhole rehabilitation that we need to do. Again, we need to line the sewers first, then we need to line the manholes so they don't leak. Okay, so we are up to a little over 7 million on that. We are up to phase 7, 8, and 9 need to be funded yet, and we need to get those bids out as soon as possible. But the overall date, we spent a little over 48 million on lining and manhole rehab. And the last line there, we've been averaging a little over 300 sanitary sewer repairs, like I just showed on that slide, to support those lining contracts to a tune of a little over $10 million. Okay. But to me, that's money well spent, because like I said, if we want to get that 100-year life out of it, if we want our children's children to have the benefit of that, we need to make sure we do our due diligence now and make sure we get max value out of that. So that's what we've spent on the consent order to date. Okay. And then the last slides are just a recap of what our needs are. Okay. Again, these are needs, not wants. Again, we bring the needs to the board, okay? Again, these aren't pet projects, these are needs. Again, you saw the pictures up there, those are needs. So back in February 27th, the work session, I handed everyone a packet. I'm sure you guys all had that packet yet. We whittled those needs down, okay? We had more needs on there, so we whittled them down to these numbers. So again, the drainage list was narrowed down. The replacement of a deteriorated corrugated metal storm system that was installed in 1957 to support the highway department's operational needs, and a full depth reconstruction of 2 town-owned streets, okay? In there is CDBG dollars, okay, and sanitary sewer improvements as well, okay? But that dollar portion covers the the storm improvements on that. That's why it's in the highway drainage section on that. Then we have our sanitary bond. We discussed it at length at the last meeting as well. We still need dollars to support our DEC consent order. Like I mentioned, we still have 3 phases of lining underway, the last 3, okay, which is good. I expect them to be completed near the end of this year if we can do the associated sanitary sewer repairs that we need to do for those. And then we have additional funds that we need to cover the linings in shed 9 and 10. Linings in shed 9 and 10 were covered by the water quality improvement grant that we got for $5 million, which is a great grant. It's the 3rd one we have. Okay, so we have $15 million in WQAP grants, but that bid came in at $6.4 million. Okay, so again, the $1.4 million is on that sheet that you guys have that we need to come up with those funds to match that grant. Okay, all right. So, and then the Genesee Street Pump Station, which we discussed last meeting as well. So that's an upgrade we need to do based on development there. And those dollars will come back to us as things get developed, okay? And then the paving bond, okay? Again, you know, unfortunately, asphalt's expensive, okay? It keeps going up, all right? So 2.25 is a big number. That is, again, to only buy asphalt, okay? Our in-house highway department, guys and girls, put that material down. We haul it, we put it down, we lay it down, we rake it, you name it, okay? That is just to buy the material, okay? No outside labor at all on that, okay? So I just want to take the time to just give a quick snapshot of where we've been, what we've done, and how we got to today, okay? So at that point in time, I'll throw it back to you guys if you've got any questions or concerns moving forward. One more thing I will say, excuse me, is I also handed out one of these to you guys as well, okay? So this is every year, Pat Bowen, the town engineer, has to put this out. This is the Town of Chickawaga Sanitary and Storm Sewer Collection System Management Plan. This goes to the DEC. We have to submit this every year, okay? You know, so take this home, you know, read it when you get a chance. Kind of gives you an overview of what we are. But I just want to call out 2 pages real quick if you can. If you go to page 12, this is our sanitary sewer maintenance department, okay? All right, so in 2023, last year, and we have all these logs, these are real numbers, okay? We flushed over 1 million lineal feet of sanitary sewers, okay? We root cut 78,000 feet of sanitary sewers. We did no bucketing because bucketing is the technology of the past. We don't want to run buckets through a line sewer because we will hurt the liner, okay? All right, we had 6 manhole repairs. We had 372 sanitary repairs, like I mentioned, to support our consent order. Okay, we've inspected over 146,000 lineal feet of sanitary sewers, and we addressed 80,000 lineal feet of grease locations. Okay, basically restaurants and whatnot. And then if you go to page 30, it just gives you the same synopsis of our highway department. Last year, we installed over 35,000 new feet of HDPE storm sewer. Plastic sewer that'll give us a 100-year life. We installed over 266 new catch basins and 9 new storm manholes, okay? So this is a nice snapshot of our annual maintenance that we do. And again, Pat Bowen puts this together every year and submits this to the DEC so they understand our operations on that. Again, I just thought it was prudent to give this copy to you guys as well, so you can see that. And again, those are real numbers of what we do, you know?
All right. Councilman Kaminsky?
Got a question. I don't know how many times this has come up, but what's basically the end of the deadline for the consent order? Time-wise.
2 things with that. 1, probably not gonna be anytime soon. And 2, when the DEC says it's over. Okay, all right, so we all know that we're starting to address lateral connections. We have a pilot study to do that. you know, and once we get done with that pilot study, we need to report to the DEC, and then time will tell what comes next, okay? But again, what we're talking about, I'm unofficially calling it phase one, okay? I have a feeling there's gonna be phase two coming, to answer your
I
question,
agree.
Jerry. Yep.
I agree.
Any other questions for Mr. Crystal from board members?
So I'm assuming you haven't scheduled any of the machines or anything from our partners that you work with because you don't know what direction we're going with this. So is it safe to assume if we don't schedule this soon, that someone else may schedule their equipment and then we'll be in a bad situation where even if we do approve this, let's say 2 more weeks from next week, we may not even have the equipment to do it now?
That's correct, Brian. So thankfully, a couple of meetings ago, we extended our existing contract, our public works contract, because we wanted to address the industry pool. Materials are coming Friday for that, so we will start that project sometime next week. But because we were able to extend that contract, those guys are here. We just got done extending the water main to the police shooting range. We're gonna install the new service connections to the comfort stations in Stiegelmeyer Park tomorrow. We'll start that, and we are starting the last of the approved ARPA projects on the sanitary sewer we need to do. But to your point, we went through audits, and one of the things that we need to do based on the audits is we need to clearly define the scope of work that we are going to do. And luckily, last year's contract has that scope of work in there. I have those things listed. I have Stiegelmeyer Park water main in there. You know, I don't have the Dingens pool. That's why we did the amendment to the contract at a board meeting. We have language in there for the shooting range. We have language in there for our consent order. So that's why we're able to get those projects ongoing as we speak. However, until we decide on what we want to target to do, I cannot write the contracts to clearly define the scope of work. So to your point, the quicker we can make a decision, the quicker we can get contracts written and out to bid. Because as we all know, with the stadium being built and other high profile jobs that are out there, labor and equipment is hard to come by right now.
Got another, so you've already given us the list. We asked you to go back, and I say we as a board as a whole, because it's all of us. Go back and kind of dwindle it down a little bit, and you did. You dwindled it down to 11.7 million now with high needs based off of what you just presented. Would you be able to, because it's often said up here at this board, do more with less? If we were to give you less money than that 11.7, would you be able to do more paving or project? You really don't have to answer that. It's
Right, no, sure, exactly. So, yes.
Any other board members, questions for Mr. Crystal?
Real quick.
Councilman Jazinski, sorry, Vern. Okay, thank you. Councilman Jazinski, you're recognized.
Thank you. In that slideshow you showed, was the town's paver used in any of that work?
Yes, it was, council member. Yes, exactly. Correct.
So we do have a paver, right?
Of a paper, correct, yes.
And talking about other projects, where are we now with that Dingens Street pool?
So like I was just mentioning to the board a second ago, materials, the quotes have went out. We received quotes back last week. We analyzed them yesterday. We approved the low bid to a company by the name of Core & Main out of Lockport, and they are going to deliver the product on Friday. Okay, I'm going to meet John Krzyzewski tomorrow so we can look at the electrical component of that building and get that underway as well. So I expect construction to start next week on installing the new water main to service the pool.
Councilmember Thompson?
Great, thank you.
You had made mention that quite a few years back, the board received a bid and it was, higher than they would like, and they gave you permission to, if you could do it for a lower cost, to go ahead and do that. Was that accurate?
Fairly, yes, correct. Just to recap that, so based on, accusations that were made, they didn't believe in the design build method that we do. So I was forced to bid a project the traditional way, whereas we don't buy materials direct from supplier. We don't use town personnel. A contractor gets to do it all. Okay, and again, we pay more for that. What I mean by that, we're paying him an upcharge for him to buy materials and run it through his or her company. Okay, so that bid came in at 1.4, and the board at the time said, okay, I'll go do it your way. And we did it our way, and we did it for less than 900 grand. Okay, because our way, again, the design build way, if that makes sense.
That's the way we're still doing it.
To this day, we're doing it the same way, correct? Yes, yep.
how does that work with the bidding process?
So we bid our contract as support contracts, okay? We assume the risk, so to speak, but our taxpayers get the reward, okay? So as these projects come under budget, as we do our due diligence, we're able to do an additional project, pave an additional street, you know, and recoup that, okay? So we bid, you'll see the last meeting, we went out to notice the bidders. You'll see the next meeting coming up, awards. There's 4 bids we went out. Material bids, so I don't have to define the scope of work on those. We have a topsoil bid, we have a casting bid, we have a pipe bid. We bid these anyways, in case, to Councilmember Pilarski's point, in case we do fund some projects, I want to have the ability to get materials. Okay, I don't want to wait for that lag and that time to be able to do that. So you'll see that going out, and Erie County, traditionally, every March 15th, opens up bids on a broad range of items. Asphalt, stone, concrete catch basins, you name it, the whole 9 yards. It's literally as thick as that handout I gave you. We buy off of that contract, okay? And then obviously New York State puts out their own contract as well. So between those 3 pieces, we support our projects.
Thank you.
I saw the highway superintendent wanted to be recognized, still wanted to speak, or?
Can I ask one question before Mark?
Yeah,
walks away?
quickly, Councilmember Pilarski.
So you said March 15th, we kind of piggyback off the county's bids or whatever. Is that usually when we start this whole process of saying, hey, we can start moving forward with it all? Or how soon or how late? Because, I mean, if it's March 15th, if we look at next week, we're already a month behind the.
Sure.
Right?
So that, to follow up on that, to answer your question, so every year, the county puts out what's called a summer maintenance material bid and a winter maintenance and material bid. Okay, the winter bid is where we buy our salt off of, for example. We buy our blades for our cutting edges on our plows, okay? All right, so they put them out in a timely fashion, so they put them out to bid in the months of, you know, February, March, so that, again, when the weather breaks, they're good to go. They're publishing them as we speak. I should see them, you know, no later than next week. Traditionally, we start on March 15th, okay, depending on weather. So as long as I've been here, you know, since the early 2000s, as soon as the weather breaks, you know, traditionally we get out there March 15th. For example, the quarry opened yesterday for hot material. Okay, we don't like to get too early out there because again, you can't get hot asphalt. Cold patch, it's expensive. It doesn't hold up well, doesn't do what we need to do. Okay, but traditionally we like to go, you know, our window is usually March 15th until Thanksgiving is our construction window. Okay, we've been, you know, lucky that that's worked for us a couple of years in the past. It's kind of hard to get to Thanksgiving depending on weather, but our window is usually March 15th to Thanksgiving.
Well, Mr. Ruzniak, and then we'll come back to you, Vern.
Tell you what, I'll put our guys up against anybody out there, any contractor, any other town. These guys do it right. You can tell we had no money this year. You guys looked at the trucks, what we did to them. We're running junk out there because we don't have money for trucks. It's taken out of our budget, okay? These guys patched, used spray foam, whatever, to fill holes in trucks, to make them presentable to our residents. They worked their tails off for us. And we didn't do waste talent all summer. I mean, I'll find work. I'm not gonna waste the taxpayers' money out here, okay? If I gotta buy 100 weed eaters to keep them going, we're gonna do it. But it's a waste of talent. We have talent here. We put good product down. You can see the pictures of what we can do. It just seems like a giant waste. So,
Ask you a question.
yes.
So we talked about the budget being cut year after year after year. Now, we're in this situation today, 2024, and last year, this board voted for that budget.
Okay, the board
So-
made a mistake. That's what I look at it.
The year
Now we
before
need to
that,
fix it.
And the year
okay?
before that. we keep
Because you
cutting
kept
that.
cut, because you tried not raising taxes. This is a great, it's politics, is the way it looks like. Everything's political here.
It's negligent. Well, I'm not trying to.
No, it's all the way around politics. And I'm tired of it. I don't take sides. Mark doesn't take sides. We're here to work for the residents. We're here to do a good job. And that's why I took this job on, to do
Why
it
couldn't
right.
you Speak up last year when we had this issue.
I wasn't in here last year.
I'm saying the outrage, nobody cared then. And now it's.
You're
the end of the
kidding.
world.
Really.
No, I'm serious.
You're kidding me. You look at this bond.
We all
This
voted
bond
for this.
is gonna cost Excuse me. one minute. $15 per household, not per person.
Everybody voted for this budget, but now it's in disarray because we won't approve just to borrow it and borrow and borrow. Why don't you
It's been a
just-
practice for
and it got us into this situation.
Bonds come off and bonds come on. They might come up a little bit. It hasn't changed. The taxes pay for it. A bond comes off, a bond comes on. It's simple math. Did you go to the high school and check with the 12th grade math class because you said they're better than we are? Did you get an answer from them?
Who said that?
You guys.
Jerry, go ahead. You had a comment, yeah.
Well, I think this is something I need to remark. And this is right out of Association of Town Highway Superintendent's Handbook. And it pretty much says it all, that the superintendent of highways is one of the most important officials in town government. Few persons would debate this. By the quality and quantity of road improvements and maintenance, by the promptness of snow removal during the winter months, by the overall tone of the highway department operations and service, townspeople are likely to form an impression of the effectiveness of the town government as a whole and of the officials whom they have elected. And it's like I said, we seem to get condemned a lot from people that weren't even here. Last year, the year before, the year before, year before. Don't know any of the circumstances. Don't really know how bad it was, but, and I'll agree with Rick. And same with you, Mark. The highway budget got chopped all to hell. And isn't it amazing that coming into this year, it got cut so bad? Because, and Rick said it, the politics were going away. And there's a lot of it, you know it, I know it, and everybody knows that there was a lot of politics involved in this. And basically, a lot of the cuts were totally arbitrary. Departments, you know, people put their budgets in, bare bones what they needed, they got chopped anyway, whether they needed the money or not. Now, I mean, my understanding, highway even ran out of money for buying tires for the vehicles, didn't they?
That's correct.
But it's like I said, and it's very easy to condemn somebody when you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And I'll tell you, everybody how crazy it is. And you were at the meeting. The night a statement was made, how much blacktop do we store in the yard at highway?
Mhm.
How do you store blacktop? Once it gets cold, it turns into one massive lump, and that's how ridiculous things have gotten in this town. Thank you.
I'll speak to the budget situation. In any town, the person in my position, a town supervisor, proposes a budget. And it takes a board majority to override that budget. And Polarsky's been around for a while. Jerry and I, every single day I've served, he's been here. And Jerry can speak to this, Brian can speak to this. When there have been budget amendments, who's usually coming to you guys saying, hey, we need to adjust the budget? And I've gotten criticized for it, and that's okay. But I've brought, in the prior budget, the need for sanitation trucks. Hey, I think we need to raise the sanitation tax to make an investment in our trucks because it's taken a couple of years for them to show up. And the trucks are well over 15 years old for a decent share of them, and we need to do something about that. And the response to that is NOAC's blowing up the budget. Communist Brian Nowak wants to spend all of our money. Here goes the socialist again. Tax and spend liberal. And I'm okay with the criticisms. But there have been proposed amendments to these budgets. Some of them have passed, some of them have not. I've brought these things to my colleagues. It takes on this board of 4 votes to get that done. So that's why it's in terms of where our budget is. Part of the reason of that is we haven't had 4 people on boards in any of these budget years willing to do some of these changes to the proposed budget. And that puts us in the position that we're in. And the task before us now is, with the work that was proposed in the bonding resolutions, I recognize that that was not the approach we're going to go. It's okay. So at this point, how much money, if any, are we willing to talk about in terms of bonding? I heard no outright opposition for bonding of any kind, and I appreciate the pragmatism. There was nobody up here said, we don't want to do any of the work. So we're willing to discuss that too. With the budget situation that we're in, our way out of this is to either say no to the work in the borrowing, or if we're going to say yes to the work, how much borrowing are we willing to do? And in the window of that borrowing, how long do we want those terms to be for? Because if we make them shorter terms, that's going to put more budget constraints on us in 2025 and 2026. But as far as those budget goes, I've been one that proposed amendments and have seen some of this coming down the road. My deputy has voted against budgets and warned us of where we are. But when you get amendments into budgets, I'm gonna vote yes on a budget to try to get those pieces, those small improvements done. So my name is on some of these budgets, and I'm not sorry for that, because there were some positive things that came with budget amendments that required my name to be on that as the final result. And I understand the frustration walking in as a new board member and saying, what the heck, how did we get here? And I hope that's helps answer the question. So, Councilman Pulaski?
So you kind of stole my thunder there, Supervisor. Councilman Thompson, you're absolutely right. The past budgets were negligent. But Supervisor, Highway Superintendent, you're absolutely right also. It's politics. I mean, like Supervisor said when he was then council member, I mean, he proposed 2 garbage trucks, and he was accused of being a socialist, just wanting to spend the taxpayers' money. And when I asked to put in some money for youth and rec, extra money, Facebook posts, oh, Pulaski and Nowak, to the money tree that the town owns. There's zero to little foresight for long term. It's always this year's budget, and sure, 0 tax increase looks sexy. Everybody wants to see that, but it's not responsible. So the moment somebody makes a recommendation to increase the proposed budget that's at 0%, you're automatically a bad guy. The politics playing right there. So this is where we're at with this situation, and I'm hoping when we get to this year's budget, it doesn't, go that way. I mean, there's gonna have to be a tax increase, in my opinion, unless we think of something and get very creative, where new money's gonna come from for these projects or even just services that we provide. But it's gonna be, budget time, it's gonna be a tough one, just give you a heads up, but you're both correct on it. It is irresponsible and it is politics.
Oh, yeah.
I guess if, I end up being, unsuccessful in this position, I'm okay with that because I'm not trying to be political. I just want to do things that are right and make sense for when I'm long gone from this position, not just for this year to make myself look good, because I don't care about that. I don't owe anybody that works for this town anything. I owe all the taxpayers, which they are taxpayers, to do the right thing and what's in the best interest for everybody. So I don't think it's the end of the world for me to ask, can we do something differently, or can we take a look at some of the streets and, find another way to get them done? I don't want to outsource really anything when it comes to paving because we can do the majority of it in town. We have the materials, we have the staff to do that, correct? Is that correct?
When you look at this whole big scope, what we're doing now is gonna decrease our cost later because we're doing it properly now. Instead of kicking the can down the road, we're gonna do something quality that's gonna last 100 years. This way, when these bonds start coming up down the road, this is gonna lower the cost of doing business in our town. What we're doing now, we have to bite the bullet, do some bonding to get to that point.
So I'm speaking of just the paving.
I'm talking, you gotta look at the drainage and the sewer on this whole thing. It's a big picture. All 3 of them are in it, okay? If we get behind on the roads, okay, if I don't do any road reconstruction this year or milling or paving, it's gonna double it up for next year. So let's take an extra road. What do I do next year? If I only get X amount, so that puts us behind on our turnaround. Remember, we're on a 15-year cycle to repair our roads, right?
And we're bonding for how long to do that?
Well, that's your opinion, your department up there. My job is to get this done, take care of our residents. You guys gotta figure out how to get the money. We don't have a lot of choice. If you guys had a magic wand to get, put it out there right now, awesome. You got a new idea, awesome. We don't have one right now. We have to get through this bond. It's the only way we can make this happen. Start planning ahead.
We're gonna do the
You gotta
same
do
thing
more.
next year too. And
We're gonna have to raise taxes. We're gonna have to raise taxes. We don't wanna raise them a lot. If we try to save up money to do these jobs, you're gonna raise them a lot to get there. You're gonna be Amherst. Okay? If we bring it up gradually, 2-3%, we can live through this. Down the road, we're gonna catch up to what we're doing here. And the costs are gonna go down. It's gonna be a maintenance cost for sewers. maintenance cost for drainage. Yes, we're gonna have resurfacing, it's our weather conditions, we run salt, it eats roads. We're in that environment. That is not gonna change. But the big department that he's working with the sewer and the drainage, this is stuff that's gonna last 100 years. Our maintenance costs, everything's gonna go down in time. Like we talk about our children and our grandchildren. When it comes to that time, it's gonna be a lot easier on them for what we do now.
So I've mentioned, I think, we should use some of our reserve funds.
Well, that's up to you
To
guys.
use some of,
Hey, if
those
whatever it takes to
capital
make this
projects. On
program
that
work,
note-
is what we gotta do.
On that note, I'm glad this came up. So as a follow-up to our last meeting, I sent an email asking for board members to request a special meeting. And within that, I did put an alternative proposal to start discussions of how to deal with this. And it was basically for us to continue the work that was put before us at the 11.7 million price tag, 11.6 and change, to complete the work. And on the road side, to bond for $1.5 million instead of $2.25 million, and pull 750,000 from reserves. So the road list that we all were given back at the end of February has a total price tag of 2.9. 665,000 to that is grant money or bond or state money from New York State CHIPS. That's at 485. We have 95 of New York State PAVE program and 85 of New York State winter recovery. That bonding or that grant money from New York covers the first $655,000 of road work that can basically get us complete either phase 3 or phase 4. We couldn't even complete all of phase 2 and we could not complete all of phase 1. So we have 4 phases of road work. The state money would get us through a total phase on 2 of those, and we would have to cut some streets if we chose to do phase 1 or phase 2. With that state money alone, one of these 3 of the 4 phases are dropping off. And mind you, phase 3 involves the streets north of George Urban that are Kilbourne, Eastland, Westland, East Grand, where drainage work is currently being done. If if we all take a drive, we're gonna see equipment that's on those roads. We're gonna see cuts have been done on those streets. There's pipe laying on Mildred right now. There's machinery on Grand. I can go through a whole litany of that. So that state money can cover paving all those roads because there's gonna end up being stone on the ground once that pipe work is done. Now, what we do with the other 2.25 if we want to pave these other phases? We can pull 750,000 from reserves, but in my email, I mentioned my personal opinion. That's an option. I don't feel it's wise. I won't rule it out, though. I'm willing to consider that seriously as part of how to get to this answer. But if the concern is bonding at a certain amount of money, we're gonna have to cut a phase out or cut certain streets out. The concern I have with cutting scattershot streets out through each of the phases is the mobilization that Crystal and Rujniak brought up. That we're already gonna have the guys and the machinery on these streets. So if you're doing work over on, let's say Dean Road, for example, why not take care of the other streets on that portion of the list, Airport, Babbitt, Bank? And if we make the decision as a board, hey, we really need to take care of Seal and Trudy, Jim is also on the list. We've already got our boys and girls over there. We've already got our equipment there. Same applies. But in terms of what we've done in the past, I mentioned in the past about all the other road paving resolutions, and you can go back to 2014 and read off the specific resolution numbers and the dollar amounts. The idea of bonding for road paving is not unusual in this town. I appreciate if we want to do something different, I'll be a partner in doing that different thing. But I think the alternative, if we want, let's say the decision we make is we want to pave. So we either borrow or we take out from our reserves or we raise the taxes. So I'm open to solutions to that. I put a solution on the road paving side that as a basis of discussion. I obviously don't expect my idea alone to dominate the day and be the thing we do. But yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
Highway Superintendent, you mentioned to me about patching and how we haven't been doing it as much as we should. the past couple of years?
Not patching, sealing.
Sealing, sorry. Is that something that would help extend the life of some of these roads?
Yes, it
That if we couldn't get to?
Well, the roads that we're doing right now, they're crumbling. Sealing's not gonna help. They'll come in this winter, hit them with the plows, you're gonna blow it right up.
I'm sorry, I should rephrase that. Not necessarily the
Not
ones that are.
these, but future roads. Yes, we can,
Correct.
for the future, we can slow the process down by doing that. So next year or the year after, we might be able to make a few cuts if we can get out there and do the crack, the seal crack.
Secondly, so I know we talked, Mark, at one point, there's a contract company that has a wider paver. Would that be utilized in doing these projects or these streets?
If need be, I believe there's one on here, Elwood, that is over with for our paver to use, and that's why I pointed it out in the snapshot I had on there, because our personnel will run that paver at no cost to us. Okay, all right, assuming same said contractor is our low bid on our public works contract. Okay,
So what is the benefit to them if we're using their equipment? You know, why would we not
because we have
to rent that?
said relationship with that contractor. Okay, all right, so if we shared stuff with him, he shared stuff with us to get these jobs done, where again, it's a cost benefit for our residents. Okay, you know, so for example, this winter, he loaned us a high lift. I mentioned this at the end of last year. You guys weren't on the board yet. That's why we bid 2 high lifts and are gonna buy 2 high lifts this year, okay? After the blizzard, we learned, listen, okay, we only have 3 operational high lifts that go on the road. We have a big one that stays in the yard at all times, okay? We have 3 to go on the road, okay? The perfect number for us is 4, okay? All right? We only have 3, one of which needs to get replaced, okay? So we have 3 plowing districts that are plowed with a high lift, okay? We did not have a 3rd high lift, okay? So he loaned us his high lift. He goes, it's gonna be sitting in my yard. He goes, if you guys wanna take advantage of it, he goes, cheers. All I ask is if it breaks or something happens, you guys service it, okay? So again, we built relationship with these guys over time, okay?
Thank you.
So dealing on the road paving side, as I mentioned before, I put an alternative out there to use some highway reserves rather than bond the full amount. What's the board's appetite on that? Their willingness to entertain that, or are we of the opinion that we should not be draining down those highway reserves any further? Or is the view of this board, we need to talk about cutting out certain streets or certain phases of the paving? I mean, Councilman Plarsko?
So if we were not already dipping into the reserves to balance the budget, which is ridiculous, I'd say yes. That's what the reserves are for, emergencies, stuff like this, or higher costs, inflation and all that. But the fact that we keep dipping into that reserve to balance a budget, we're not going to have a reserve left for emergencies if we now dip into it for emergencies and balancing a budget. So I do not want to dip into the reserve. Raising taxes is a moot point at this point because we can't do that until we have the next year's budget. So we can't go in the middle of it and increase taxes to address this issue. So I think we need to bond it, in my opinion. And use as little reserve as possible if we have to.
Okay, Councilman Kaminsky, I saw your hand.
Well, here's the whole thing, and I'm not even sure that everybody understands. We've got multiple reserves in the town for special districts. Now, I discussed this earlier today. Got the one for the sewer, but the biggest thing is those reserves that are in that special district, we can't use in the highway department and vice versa. So we're pretty much limited to what's in that highway reserve. And now, actually, I had a conversation about it today. Snowstorm 2 years ago. We may be getting some money from FEMA. We may not, we don't know. So we had to float all those expenses the same as the snowstorm this past year. Well, where it really gets to be difficult, we were lucky we got an easy winter this year. Next winter could be a total disaster. What are we doing? We don't have the money to pay the contractors, can't get it done. And I'm sure nobody in their right mind, whatever you do, unless you just don't know finances, period, you gotta have a cushion on everything in my book. We have done bonding, and that not only the town of Chickawaga, the state, everybody does it. Every single municipality I deal with does bonding. And like I said, it's no different. Brought it up at the last 2 weeks ago meeting. Somebody buys a house, they just don't write a check for it. They get a mortgage, which is the same thing, you're borrowing money because you don't have it right now. And I think if we don't get this done, maybe you might know, Mark, but I think, the one contractor we got into, we got a bid on it last year, it was up 30% this year. I have no idea what the costs are gonna be a year from now or 2 years from now.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, we're kind of rolling the dice on this. And the only thing that I can ask the people that are against it, tell me where you want to get the money from and what we're gonna do. It's that simple.
Just keep maxing the credit cards out.
What credit card?
Just keep bonding
Okay, so you're for it?
responsibly, yes. I am willing to bond to get this work done. I would like to know the amount that's in our highway reserve funds today. If you have that, I know we did. I don't remember what page that was on. You have that information?
Yeah, I do. Unassigned fund balance is $6.3 million as of the end of 22, and then so it's probably, 23's financial information is not fully complete at the moment. There's still rules that are being made and things along those lines. But it probably will be just slightly less than that. So 6.3, we'll call it $6.2 million that we have of available fund balance
In the highway reserve?
in the highway fund, correct?
And what was it at before? What was our high?
Well, when the hard concept of this whole thing is that when you appropriate fund balance in the budget, okay, so you say that, okay, we're going to balance the budget with this appropriation of our funds, of our savings, of what has come back to us, okay, so there's different years, different things happen, obviously, like winter storms or things along those lines. We used $2.6 million of our fund balances last year in 2022 because of those winter storms. And like you said, this year wasn't as bad. You appropriate that, you don't always use the full amount that you appropriate. So rarely do we ever use the full amount that we appropriate in our fund, in the budget. The situation that is occurring is that we are appropriating more and more each year, so we're going to use more and more eventually each year. So it's a balancing act, as I've stated, in previous meetings, where, you're trying to, of course, not increase taxes to the best of your ability, but, if you have recurring expenses that will happen each year, i.e. payroll and things along those lines, you need to have supporting recurring revenue. And, in highway, we do use sales tax as the largest portion of the revenue source for that fund. So sometimes sales tax comes in, in much greater quantity. And that's why at times there was so much more highway reserves than other areas. And, in the recent budgets, we are now, budgeting more, what I'm going to say is more aggressively, to say, okay, if you think you're going to get, $9 million or $10 million of sales tax, in the past, I would get nervous to say, we're going to budget that full thing as the revenue. because you don't know what's gonna happen from a sales tax standpoint. So you would say, okay, well, I'll budget, a couple $100,000 less than that. And, okay, if it comes in, great, and then it comes as your fund balance, you get to keep that in your fund balance. And, as you said, fund balances are for emergencies and for, a capital type item, something that you're gonna spend hopefully, once or once every X number of years. So you don't want to spend fund balance on balancing your operations, your expenses, so, I mean, I'm not opposed to saying use some of the fund balances. I'm always wary of the whole situation being that you just don't know what you don't know and what's gonna hit the fan with highway, as we say. I mean, the real question mark with highway is what's the weather gonna be like each winter? That's our biggest question mark. So, there's a, decent amount of fund balance right now in highway fund, and that, a lot of people were criticizing and saying, we shouldn't be sitting on that much. So, I mean, all I'm saying is that to use it to balance budgets is wrong. To use it for, capital items, it's a better way to use it if you're deciding to use it that way.
So with the money we have in our highway reserves, is there any of that that's interest bearing that we have in accounts that we earn interest funds on that generate more revenue for that fund?
We said
So
that
like
again.
our cash reserves, do we earn interest on that as savings?
Absolutely, yeah.
So
So we budget for revenue with interest income, with those monies that are in, as we talked about with investments, where we can open CDs for certain lengths of time. We can have it in money market accounts. And lately, the interest rates have been better. So that's usually, a lot of times with budget, there's give and take. You got a higher cost on the interest side of borrowing, but you're also earning more money as well through your cash savings.
And that's exactly why I asked, because this discussion and the discussion around interest to this point has been purely negative and purely as a cost to the town. When you're talking about a bond, that is absolutely true. But if the opportunity cost or the alternative to the bond is to use cash, we're going to drain down those cash reserves that are in the savings account, generating some interest income. So it's not like when we have the interest question, it's all a negative on the borrowing side. If we go over to cash, we're giving up some of the interest earnings, and we can argue dollar amounts of what's better, but there's a trade-off. So I just wanted to point that out. And I know we're talking about capital costs, but when you get to road paving, I'm gonna read off the list of the resolutions since 2014, because it's an annual recurring cost. And this is why I said in my email, in my view, it wasn't wise to drain down the reserves. You got 2014-147, that was a bond for 2.3 million. Reconstruct, resurface highways, and that was paving associated with that. In 2015, we had 2015-128, that was for 2.3 million, and there was paving associated with that one. We had 2016-136 for 2.3 million. Reconstruct, resurface highways, we borrowed in that year. We had 2017-192, that was a 3 million. We had resurfacing highways of 1.9 million in 2018. We had skipped 19, I believe, and in 20, we had another resolution, 2020-149 for 750. We had 250,000 in 2021, that was 21-49. And we did paving resolutions in terms of bonding in 2022 and in 2023. The resurfacing highway, it was 2023-109 for 1.75 million. Passed this board unanimously without opposition. And 2022-188, it was for 1.5 million highway resurfacing. It passed this board unanimously without opposition. And I say that not to insist we do exactly what I'm proposing. It's just that, if we're doing these bonds on an annual basis for this capital work, and that's been the approach to date, the alternative to the bond is to use cash of some sort. If we're not gonna borrow it, we have to have it somewhere. And as I said, if we could take $750,000, I'm totally on board with that, with, highway reserves to do the existing list. We would have to borrow one. If we don't wanna borrow that 1.5 million and use the reserves, we should start talking about what roads or what phases we don't wanna do. And each of the 4 phases have subtotals. Phase 1 is subtotal, that's about $750K. Phase 2 is about $800,000. Phase 3 is around $560, and then phase 4 is $561,000. So if we're talking about this 2.25 million number, if we're all okay with that, we can get into discussions of how much is reserves, how much is a bond. That number's too high. Let's try to agree on a number. And then if we can agree on a number, we start talking discussions about what roads we remove from the paving list. So, yeah.
I'm on board with that. I think it'd be important to discuss the sewer projects first, since the is that needs to get done first.
Okay.
Then you can go to maintaining and resurfacing some of these roads. And that is one of the reasons why I checked with Mr. Kraus about the fund balances. Because I think we should use what we can, get as much of that work done this year, and we can move forward from there. I am okay with bonding, to get these streets done. But when it comes to the reserve funds, I think we should use as much as we can to get that work done for the sewer, because those are the items that are gonna last for 100 years, we're being told. So if that's a one-time cost, that's what these funds should be used for.
I mean, so to your mind, are you thinking we move ahead with the whole list here? Or are you thinking we scale it back? Or like you said, you just wanna get the sewer squared out of the way and come back to this?
I would like to try and get some sort of plan for the sewer
Sure,
work.
yeah, watch, there's sanitary sewer and there's storm sewer. The fund
If I could be recognized,
can only be used for,
Supervisor.
Let Rick finish up and then you're next, okay?
that can only be used for
Thank
the storm sewer. Okay, the sanitary sewer is a separate fund. I can't touch theirs and they can't touch mine.
Well, we do have a sewer
You have a
reserve
sewer,
fund also.
sewer, so that's gonna have to be part of that, so you have to keep those separate.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
But I just have a quick question.
Councilmember
sorry.
Bukowski, where to go to Councilmember
Barb can
Jazinski?
go first. I can go after her.
Councilmember Bukowski.
Thank you. I just have just to recap. So in the highway fund, there's roughly 6 million,
Right,
roughly.
Mr. Kraus?
And then
Yeah.
if we do take from there though, throughout the rest of this year, there's gonna be some revenue, we just don't know about, to recap some of the stuff that we would borrow, correct? Going back
To
into the
replenish,
fund
you're saying?
to replenish.
Not really, because there's revenue in the highway fund, certainly. There's also expenses in the highway fund that we use the revenues to pay for expenses. So, what we're saying is that budget currently is kind of out of balance, where you're using fund balances to balance it. So, there won't be more revenues coming back to the fund balance. You're using it.
You're asking about the sales tax?
Yeah.
Like I said, so revenues wise, in highway, the largest revenues are sales tax, and then there's some revenue from Erie County. They pay us to do maintenance of some of their roads. I think we maybe get $200,000 from them or something like that with that agreement. There's like interest income, like Supervisor Nowak
right.
mentioned. And then there's some, real property taxes, so balance what you're spending. And, will there be additional sales tax over what is budgeted? Hopefully, but I don't know that for a fact,
Yeah, I'll guarantee. Councilmember Jazinski, you're up.
I think it would be fair to say that we definitely want to do some of this work, but raising taxes is not going to solve the problem. What it's going to do is it may solve our road issues and maybe our sewer issues, but the after effects are going to hurt people's wallets and, potentially put people in, a place where they can't afford taxes. I think it would be fair to say that, we do need to do some work. There are roads that desperately need to be done. Reviewing the list and looking at your Facebook Live post, I can tell you my road where I live on is in worse shape than some of the roads you were looking at on your Facebook page there. I do think that Eggert Road, the Cheektowaga side over there, that work probably needs to be done first. So I think it would be fair that, yes, we'll do some work as long as it doesn't equate to raising taxes. There's people that can't afford to go on vacation. There's people who had to drain their 401ks. There's people still hurting from, post-COVID right now. There's people that, need a car that can't buy it right now because, they just can't afford it. So yes, we want to do projects. We want to continue to, fix the town up, but we have to do it within, a reasonable way of doing things and a means of where it doesn't equate to raising taxes. So what I would like to do is challenge Rick Rusnak to maybe draft up 10 roads that are the worst in Cheektowaga and propose that, and then maybe we could look at that and address it that way. Unfortunately, I think the list is a little large right now. Maybe if it was different times and the economy wasn't as bad as it was and the aggregate wasn't as expensive as it is, I think we would be able to take care of that. But I think, the short-term solution right now is maybe draft up a smaller list and really prioritize what roads need to be done. And as far as the sewers go, I think we should worry about that on an emergency basis right now because, I mean, yeah, maybe some of the DIs need to be replaced, like the one that was on thing Mark Crystal had. Looks like the one DI need to be replaced. Maybe fix just that one DI. I mean, but to do the whole list, I think it's just a little large right now. I think we need to consolidate that list. So I'd be in favor of maybe doing maybe 10 roads, the 10 worst roads right now, and doing fixing the sewer as it on call need basis.
I appreciate your comments. So, going back to the road list, we do have 54 streets on this list. And if we're working purely from this, are there 44 this board is prepared to act?
I'm sorry, Brian, I just wanted to make one more comment.
Okay, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, I wasn't quite done. I apologize.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think, referring to Amherst obviously is not the town we want to refer to. I think we need to refer maybe to like Lancaster, because I know like they didn't outsource anything when it came to removing the snow, and, the highway department seemed to be able to handle it. And I feel if we got the equipment and the manpower, we need to do as much as we can possibly in-house. And if we don't have the people with the skill set, I think we need to be able to empower the people to get that skill set so we can do more of the work in-house. I'm just really opposed to outsourcing work when I know we're complaining that these guys aren't going to get overtime and stuff like that. Well, outsourcing work, it's taking food off their table. I mean, if we have the equipment, yeah, maybe we have to do the road in an extra swipe. Well, at least it keeps our guys employed. We might not have the best equipment, but at least we have equipment.
Okay, yeah, I think in the presentation, there were discussions about how the design build method is a in-house method that avoids outsourcing that is traditionally done in other towns. From what I've heard from our folks in highway and engineering, we're doing what you're advocating. And I agree with your general sentiments. The more we can do in-house, the better. And I feel that we're doing that with what's been presented to us here. Our job as board members, I think we all know it, is to trust but verify. We get told something, dig into it, look into it. And as far, and again, I thank you for the specifics on the idea of how many streets we should be doing. You know, what we had up here was the idea of taking care of all these streets. There's another proposal to do a more restricted list. I think we should take every proposal seriously. Is there an appetite from the board members up here to do 10 streets instead of 54? And maybe do 10 streets, including some that are not even on this list? I'm not of that view, but is there anybody else? I'm not hearing anybody else on that one.
Brian,
Yeah, Rick.
okay,
I heard you.
the outsourcing part, I mean, we deal with an outside contractor. We run 65 people on our crews. We run 10 to 30 on their crews when we need them in the high end of the season. We don't use them year round. It's just the construction season. So the percentages for outside and the mix we have, it's a pretty good mix. We get a lot done, tell you what, because our people are busy. Our talent is working. They're not weed eating, doing menial tasks because we're out paving, putting drainage in and doing what we're supposed to be doing. So that's the key. It's not like, we're not wasting outside services. We're minimizing them to the best we can and doing the best we can with them. But we're using our 65 people to make this happen. I mean, we're gonna keep them busy. If it's planting flowers or whatever you want, but I'll keep them busy. But to waste talent is a sin. We need to do this and do it right.
Did you want to turn? Okay. Yeah, I know Councilmember Thompson brought up the sewer bonds. So we had two that we discussed previously and the same consideration of work on there. So just to give the public a general idea, we had a proposal given to us 6 weeks ago that included closer to $17.5 million worth of work. And the goal was to scale that down to a less aggressive dollar amount. And we got to somewhere around 11.5. And in that, we had a highway drainage bond and a sanitary bond. And the highway drainage bond was for $5.5 million, and the sanitary bond was for 3.9. That sanitary bond for 3.9 covered $2 million for sanitary sewer related to DEC consent order. That was sewer sheds 9 and 10. Oh no, that was $2 million for DEC consent order. There was 1.4 for sewer sheds 9 and 10. And then there was $500,000 for the Genesee Street pump station. So I'd like to kind of move along discussions on that sanitary bond and see where our board is on doing that work. So I know when we discussed the bond, there was a desire to enumerate exactly where those dollars were meant to be earmarked and what to cover. This 3.9 was essentially covering 3 areas: the sanitary sewers related to DEC consent, sewer sheds 9 and 10, and then the Genesee Street pump station, which is Genesee Street closer to Genesee Transit. And if that's associated with the big new development over there on Transit Road, it used to be that farm property. So with that, the proposal I put on the table was to discuss the existing bond that was put up before and to cover all that same work. I'm hard pressed to pull one of these 3 projects off the list at this point. So with that, I'll open it to the board. Councilman Kaminsky.
Well, Brian, here's the, I think I may have mentioned this at last week Tuesday's meeting. And I think you said it. I had warned the town going back probably 2.5 years ago, what was happening to costs, at least as I had seen it. My costs have gone up astronomically. I think probably one of the biggest ones was through engineering, the one contract we had. From the time we bid it till the time we had to rebid it, time ran out. 1 year's time, the prices went up 30%. And this is my concern. If we only say we do 10 roads this year, we've got 54 total, so that's gonna leave 44. How many are gonna be bad if we really hit a bad winter? And I'm saying if. How much worse are they gonna be next year? Sad part about blacktop, it tends to crumble relatively fast. You know, and it's like I said, I'll give an example. Anybody travel Union Road? How quick
Yeah, it's
that,
a state highway.
I'm just making a point, Mike, if you don't mind. The
No, I
biggest
don't
thing,
mind. I'm just saying that's a state highway. I'd like to see what ARPA is covering as far as any of this DEC consent order. I'd like to see it broken out from all the proposed streets and sewer. I think if we segregated the two, that would probably be good.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Jazinski. We're gonna give the floor back to Councilman Kaminsky, let him finish his point, and I see Mr. Crystal's at the podium. You'll be recognized next.
well, I think that's the issue I've got with it. These roads are not gonna get any better. And, like I said, the last thing I wanna do is wind up repairing sewers on an emergency basis. Actually, the one that, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, the one that runs between the backyards on Kemp,
Correct.
what do we do if it collapses? Somebody falls in it.
Mhm.
We will have an astronomical lawsuit. And just throwing a Band-Aid on it is not gonna work. And the biggest thing, the way I look at it, even from a business standpoint, none of this is gonna be any cheaper 3 months from now, 6 months from now, or 12 or 18 months from now. It's gonna cost us more in the long run. And I said this at a multitude of meetings before. Beware of the high cost of the low price. We might wind up cheating a little bit now, saving some money, but we're gonna pay for it in the long run. And, I'd be willing to put dinner on it with anybody that 2 or 3 years from now, we'll be sorry that we didn't do what we originally set out to do.
So with that, I'm gonna go to Mr. Crystal. Can you speak to Councilman Jazinski's question on ARPA?
Correct, yes. So when it comes to the consent order, so I'm gonna focus on the sanitary aspect now of our budgeting, okay? So there's 3 pieces in that. You'll see the associated sanitary sewer repairs for 2 mil, okay? You'll see the 1.4 million and some change, okay? And the 500 grand for the pump station. Pump station speaks for itself. It's not a debate. We'll get reimbursed that 500 grand over time, okay? So that's a non-issue, so let's leave that at that. The 1.4 million, okay, is, like I said earlier, we got a $5 million grant to do the lining in shed 9 and 10. Okay, we always knew the max we can get was 5 mil, so we applied for 5 mil. We knew that the job was going to be greater than 5 mil. Okay, the job came in at 6.4, right at our estimate. We need the 1.4 to finish that project. Okay, all right, so that's a real number there. It's cut and dry as far as that goes. The sanitary sewer repairs. Okay, we budgeted $2 million last year for ARPA funds for sanitary sewer repairs associated with our consent order. Okay, we did 372 of them, as I mentioned in the report. Okay, we know exactly where they are. Okay, we spent $2.3 million and some change on 372 repairs. That includes digging it, that includes the materials for it, and that includes the restoration for it. Sometimes they're concrete, sometimes there's asphalt, sometimes there's other things. Okay, all right, so we spent the $2 million in ARPA on that, and the 300,000 came out of our operational budget in sewer. We used to have 600 grand in our operational budget in sewer for contracted sanitary repairs. We now have $300,000 in our sewer budget for contracted sanitary repairs. So we're projecting, based on historical averages of our consent order, once we started our consent order heavy in 2016 with our first lining contract, we average about 300 repairs to support that work. I just showed you a couple snapshots of that real quick. I can show you every snapshot that we have to do. So based on historical average, based on what we spent last year, based on what we need to do, we still have 3 open sheds, sheds 4, sheds 9, and sheds 10, all open contracts that we need to finish up, okay? So we're estimating $2 million based on averages. We budgeted $2 million. We spent that $2 million on ARPA last year on 372 sewer repairs, to answer that question, okay?
Okay. Yeah, Councilman Thompson, and then Councilman Lars. Sorry about that.
All right. So the DEC consent to 2 million, we obviously know we are in the court order to make sure we do that. You mentioned we're gonna get the 500 at one point, either way, young development. The 1.4, however, I mean, would that be something we can consider taking reserve funds to do that? And as far as the sanitary sewer systems, that would be complete and we'd only have to worry about the Harlem pump station at another conversation.
Do you have a proposed dollar amount? You thinking a portion of it? You thinking all of it?
All the 2 million is coming from ARPA funds.
Right.
No, no, it's not. No, we budgeted $2 million last year in 2023 with ARPA. Okay, so ARPA is spoken for, ARPA is done, but that's why we didn't do a sewer bond last year for repairs. To answer Councilmember Jazinski's question, we budgeted 2 million of ARPA last year and we spent 2 million ARPA on 372 sewer repairs.
No, I was meaning
Okay.
specifically the 1.43. Are you thinking a portion of that? You thinking a larger amount?
Exact answer to that. I mean, it needs to get done either way, the EC consent, we're gonna be bonding that no matter what, is that correct?
The alternative to bonding, this 1.437 will be finding cash somewhere in town accounts. And the go-to for this would be, we're talking sanitary sewer repairs, would be the sewer fund reserves, is that correct? Okay,
Correct, yeah.
so can you speak to how much we have in sewer reserves right now?
Unassigned sewer, fund balance is about $5 million. So I'm estimating it at 5.5 at the end of this year.
Got it. What percentage of the annual operating revenues of the sewer budget are we talking there? I know that's one of the higher percentages, because we talk
Yeah,
like 15%,
It's about 35%, right?
that's about 35.
Yeah.
So we would probably, if we did the entire amount, we'd probably cut that 35 in half down to 17%. We'd have probably, what, 2 or 3 months operating expenses of a sewer fund? Is that a fair guesstimate? I'm sorry to just throw that at you. I know it's not a 5-second answer.
Like I mentioned, for some of these long-term sewer projects that need to get done, I think it's smart to use reserve funds if we do have them. I think that's where this whole conversation needs to start. Because, you know, a lot of these paving projects, you know, you're not going to be doing unless you fix the proper lining and fix the sewers that are damaged right now. So I think it's important to kind of start there and you can branch out and pave, you know, following that. So I'd like to get that information from them and see if we can move forward in the conversation to the roads next.
No, fair enough. I mean, you know, when we're talking sheds 9 and 10, I don't believe any of the streets on our list for 2024 are within those sewer sheds, so. We do have drainage work going on the phase 3 list, so, I get your logic and I agree with that. Hey, deal with the sewers. If you're talking full road reconstruction or the design build, as it was called, deal with the drainage piece first and then deal with the surface after. I'm right there with you. But, Mr. Kraus, sound like you had an answer?
Well, I mean, so if you take, let's say, $1.5 million, just rounding, out of that fund balance, I mean, you'd be more closer to 21% of your fund, of your operating expenses, you know, so with your reserves. So, you know, so it's taking 14% of your fund balance. You know, I mean, I think the thing that's, you know, I get your thought process, council member, on it's gonna last a long time, and that's good, you're right. You know, I know that we're talking about these things as 2 separate projects, but really, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but I mean, the $2 million is really being spent to repair the sewers before you line the same sewers.
You're correct, Brian. Like I mentioned earlier, so if we want max value of that line sewer, we have to ensure that the hose pipe, the existing sewer, is repaired to the max. Yes.
So to do that repair of those sewers, repair and then lining, that is the consent order. That is our answer to the consent order. So, I mean, that's all one project, really. I know it's stated separately, but it's really goes hand in hand. You really can't approve the 1.4 without the 2 million, is
Yeah.
What I'm saying, you know, so, I mean, I guess you could approve the 2 million without the 1.4, but then you still got half of a job done, you know, you got the sewers repaired, but you're not able to line them. Like you
That's nice,
was.
those sewer reserves.
Yeah,
And so with the reserve, with those sewer reserves, our main pump station, if there's any issues, we'd have to tap into those sewer reserves to do that work. To deal with the main pump station. It is a Pat
Yeah.
Bowen question as well.
right, main pump is part of the sewer district, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
that's-
And you know, that's, I guess, one of my hesitancies of the whole thing of saying use fund balance is, because as you mentioned earlier, like, we're talking about doing $3,950,000 of work, but then we cut down a $2 million project out of that with the Harlem Road, Harlem Pump Station, that was repaired, but we feel like that's not a permanent repair. So, you know, if that hits the fan where, you know, they came up with a solution to that for a short term, but if it actually like becomes more of an issue that needs to be incurred quickly, that will be a fund balance type of a situation, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, you know, that could be $2 million that you're needing to hit right there. And
There was we were talking about projects in 2025. It's, in discussions with this board, there've been comments, about being proactive. And that's part of what this is all about, is being proactive. We have a dollar amount associated with 2025 on this list for main pump station at $500,000. And anticipated work that we will have to do down the road to deal with that, the building being, 41 years old at this point, 41 years old?
44 years old, runs
44.
24/7 nonstop.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's something we'll have to deal with next year, and we've been, as a board, have been put on notice about that already. And, Kraus mentioned Harlem Road too, that we take down those reserves, if we take down those reserves to cover this part, we get from having, 60% of the annual operating expenses closer to the high 30s. And God forbid one of these things go bust, between those two things, these reserves are basically gone. We have to work on rebuilding them. And how do we rebuild them? We either try to redevelop our way out of the problem, or we raise taxes, and it's probably gonna be the second one doing that. Like, the alternative to raising taxes is not doing the work. There's, it's either you raise taxes or you do this work. I mean, if we're gonna do this work, we're gonna have to find some money to pay for it somewhere. We have grant money supporting it already. I'm happy to be a player to keep working on that, but that grant money's no guarantee. So,
I got a question for Mark. So this picture you showed us right here with the water all pretty much to the top of the pipe,
Yes,
that's a busted sewer right there?
that is a storm sewer,
Storm
correct.
sewer.
That's part of our drainage conversation we'll have next. Yes,
So whether
yep.
it's DEC sewer, the drainage one or the storm ones or whatever, in the case, let's say a brand new one's put in, do you still have to line that?
No, you do not have to line that,
You don't
no.
have to
So,
line
so that project you see there, okay, there's two segments of that project that I'm gonna attempt to line, okay, to save us major disruption there, okay? But we, again, as a storm sewer, our sewer maintenance guys helped us out. We inspected the whole thing. We got our cameras and everything. That's why you see the pictures from the inside like you do, so we know exactly what's there,
So
okay?
two sections that you're gonna attempt to line and
Correct.
salvage.
Correct.
Is it cheaper to line it and salvage it, or wait until an emergency happens and then we're paying double, triple, or whatever?
It is
costs?
much cheaper to line it and replace it now than when catastrophe hits.
So the theory
Yes.
of waiting until an emergency strikes
Correct.
doesn't really
Yes.
make much sense fiscally.
Because to what you said earlier, okay, then, again, we have no contracts in place, we have no equipment available to us, we have no emergency contracts in place that we can pull from if need be, okay, to handle that kind of stuff. I have no material on order to replace that stuff. Material is extremely difficult to come by, okay, at times, especially pipe that large, it's a custom order, okay? So that's probably gonna take, upwards of 6 to 8 weeks to get our hands on, okay?
Price gouging could take effect where
Correct.
bidders know that we need them more than they need us. and just
Exactly.
Jack up the price there,
Correct.
so it just doesn't make sense, right?
Yes, yep.
So-
Mark,
so-
I'm looking at the ARPA spreadsheet we did back when we were getting the funding. Did we do the work for almost $6.5 million for sewer shed number 3?
That is ongoing, underway, correct. We started it last year, Councilmember Jazinski, and we are underway right now to complete that, yes, okay?
So it looks like in sewer restoration, we have probably closer to $10 million currently working. Because I'm just looking at the math here. We got the sewer shed 3. We have upgrades, 10 sewer lift stations. There's 1.25. And then we have sanitary DEC consent order work for 1 million. So that looks like closer to $10 million for those projects we currently got working from ARPA funding.
Sure. So just to back up on that point, I spoke with Brian Kraus several weeks ago with regards to our ARPA funds. So some of the dollars that you mentioned there, council member, are already spent and done. So for example, the pump station work, the replacement that we had on there has been completed. Okay, so the full depth reconstructions of Wallace and Lemoyne, those have been completed. We are underway on the 1.7 million to remove the 2 siphons on Mildred and Andres. The upgrades of 1.25 million to the upgrades to the 2 lift stations, that has been completed and spent. Okay, so the 5.4 million we have under sewer shed 3, we spent close to 2 million of that already. Last year, we started that project last fall. We're underway and we anticipate hopefully to complete that by the end of this year, which will complete that 5.4 million. And then the sanitary sewer work, like I said, the $2+ million we budgeted last year for the repairs, we did those repairs last year. So there's a big number there, but again, that has been spent, okay, or is accounted for to be spent, if that answers your question.
Yeah, so it looks like we've spent some pretty good money. It just putting it out there, if we didn't get the ARPA funding, we probably would have had to consider bonding for that money. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
All the ARPA money's been earmarked 12 times already, so to keep referencing that as if that's an option, I think we're just wasting everyone's time on that. That
Just
money,
making a point of it. It's not harping on it, Brian. It's just using it as a reference point. I'm just asking Mr. Crystal on what work we did.
and I'm not coming at you saying that you're asking for, I'm just saying we keep talking about the ARPA money that's already been spent. I think we need to think of ways to pay for what's currently in front of us or not pay for what's in front of us and move forward with it. We're not getting any more ARPA money. We have to have it spent down and gone soon, and it's already earmarked, so they've already used the ARPA money they've been allocated, and we're not getting it from another department, unless there's the cost overruns aren't there, and even then it's gonna be minimal compared, it's a drop in the bucket for this, if there is anything left with that ARPA money. I think we need to think, what do we want to do moving forward instead of keep going back to the same. We don't want to go to the taxpayers. I agree with that and understand that. We don't want to raise taxes. There's no ARPA money, so where is this money that we're gonna do this? Either we're gonna bond it or we're gonna use the reserves. There's 2 options, or a combo of the 2, and we need to think of that.
I think that's a good point. That's kind of how we got here today,
Right.
is the last 20 years, it's just been rubber stamp, spend. And don't get me wrong, this, work that's underground, that's great work. Those are things that nobody in this town will ever see and truly appreciate, but a lot of that stuff needs to get done. However, we're at a point where, if you want to crucify us, we're myself, and I like to think, Barb and Mike and even the rest of this board are trying to be objective to some things and at least asking questions and not just saying, oh yeah, go ahead. You said you need $5 million, go right ahead. No, I want to know where each cent is going and that it's accounted for. And, for so many years, it's just been, nobody even bats an eye, and you just, pass it along. And that's, again, how we get to the situation where we are today. So to continue doing that is not the solution either. And that's why, I recommend, let's see what work we can get done. And I appreciate everybody sitting down today to try and do that. It's not going to be a 5-minute fix, but we need to slow down a little bit and see what we can do to try and correct the ship. Because there are a lot of people that have moved out of town and they say, why do I live in Cheektowaga and pay such high taxes? More than people that live in Orchard Park. They have double the footprint in property.
Hey, Jerry, I gotta
It's like
excuse
running a
myself.
restaurant.
Hold on, Rick. I gotta excuse myself for just a minute. Can you take over as chair until?
Yeah.
All right, Rick's recognized and then Barsky.
Sure.
I would agree to Councilmember Thompson. We need to pump the brakes on this. Raising taxes is not the,
Speaking.
it's, I know, let me finish though, Jerry, please. Yeah, pumping, we need to pump the brakes on this and really do this in a way that it's not gonna adversely affect the taxpayers because, you know, I think it's fair to say that, you know, we want to fix these, do this stuff, but we need to fix it in a way that it isn't going to adversely affect the taxpayers. And there, you know, there's people in this town that really struggle with, you know, paying taxes as it is. You know, there's people that, you know, paid off their house 20 years ago that can't afford the taxes because it's just, you know, they're on a fixed income. I mean, we want to do the right thing, but we have to do it, you know, that's right for all, just not, you know, just people who think that we have to do the full list. So I think we need to consolidate the list and we need to look at, you know, ways of financing the list because as I said, my street's pretty bad too. And I mean, the fire trucks have no problem getting down on my road when some of the seniors get sick and stuff. So, I mean, so I think we just need to pump the brakes as Councilmember Thompson had mentioned. Thank you.
You finished, Vern?
Thank you, Jay. Sorry, I kind of lost my track a little bit there, but the majority is, you know, I don't want to bond items that are, you know, good for 10, 15 years and bond them for 20, 30
Right.
years. So that is a lot of my hesitation in some of these things. But, you know, for the record, I would like to, you know, even after this meeting, with Mr. Kraus to say, you know, these are the funds that he's comfortable using from, you know, the sewer reserves or the highway reserves. And I'd like to try and get as much of this stuff done as we can. So I think it was great dialogue with everybody. And I think we at least have a direction that we can head in. You know, again, I want to get this done as much as we can responsibly. And, you know, our workers are fantastic, like you said, Rick, and I want to make sure that they are doing as much as they can without, you know, the other crews coming in.
It's a small percentage compared to what we are. You know, like I said, explained, it's like running a restaurant. You got your crew, you got your cooks, everybody's there, you don't have the food. There's nothing on the plate. Bottom is the resident that's there expecting something out of it. They don't get it. And that's the same thing we're into. We're running a company here.
Right, it all
It's
starts
just-
at the top.
It's just a big business.
Yeah.
But cost us, we know there's a cost to this whole thing, putting it together. We're spreading it out the best we can to get that cost manageable. And we know we gotta do some bonding to get it. I mean, you can pull some out of reserves, whatever you gotta do, but we still have to get the job done to take care of the residents. That's the bottom line is the quality of life, what we do. We compare ourselves, if somebody compares us to the city of Buffalo. You know why we are what we are? Because it's what we do to keep it that way. We back off, we're gonna look like that. Yeah, and I don't wanna get to that point. I'm proud of our town. I wanna see everybody have quality services. And that's what we gotta look at.
So if I can,
Go ahead, Vern.
yeah, thank you, Jerry. If I could speak on what Councilmember Thompson said, I don't think we rubber stamp it. I mean, Mark comes to us with these lists and a plan, and he's done that with vehicles, he does it with paving, he does it with sewers, and my personal opinion, I think Mark's one of, if not the smartest employee we have in town. Very
I meant
knowledgeable.
In general,
What's that?
I meant in general, not just.
So, I mean,
this
I think his
specific.
track history proves, you know, hey, he was able to save $500,000 by doing the project a different way, by doing it in-house and borrowing equipment, or he was able to go a different route, you know, so he looks at the whole picture of it all and tries to see, you know, where can he not cut corners, but cut expenses, but still get the job done to quality, you know? So when Mark comes to us, you know, before this board and that, I have full faith in him. Others, you know, I may have some questions and a little hesitation and doubt, but I trust everything he's saying, and his track history proves it, just by what he presented earlier today. So I wouldn't say it was rubber stamped, you know, in the past years. And this is needed work. It's not flashy work. We're not seeing the underground sewers and all
Sorry to
that stuff.
interject, I apologize, I didn't mean rubber stamping from Mark Crystal, I meant the town as a whole and operations.
Fair enough. Thank you. I'm glad to clear that up because I was like, I was looking.
No, I did not.
But sewer, I mean, I get it. Sewer's not flashy. It's not, you know, all great. We can cut a ribbon. We got a new storm drain or, you know, it's not a playground or anything. So I get it too, you know, on that end of it all, but it's definitely needed. I mean, if sanitation backs up or something, we're looking at a whole world of hurt, you know, other issues there, you know. DEC consent orders, if it's not done by a certain time, the fines, those will rack up. So I think we just need to give it some thought. I don't agree with 10 streets. I believe this was narrowed down as much as we could. You know, these are high need ones, you know, like presented. But that's just my stance on it.
Councilman Kaminsky.
Basically, to pick up where Brian left off, I don't care how you put a rubber stamping, and mainly because I was born and raised in this town. Wasn't involved with politics directly, but I was involved with a lot of people that were in it. And I've argued with anybody, maybe 40 years ago, 50 years ago, in a whole different ballgame. But I know factually, the work that went into just this building alone, just getting the garbage totes on board would save us over $500,000 a year. And the biggest problem I've got, don't take this personally, Vern. How old are you? How many years
36.
you been involved with the town?
I've been here a month before now.
Okay,
I've
a
lived
month
here
before
almost all my
now.
life.
I just want to know what you're basing your statements on, that everything here was rubber stamped. You have no idea, the engineering department, facilities department. I mean, youth and recreation, the amount of work that these people have done, and every time you turn around, they're getting kicked in the rear end. And then we're gonna take everything, even more taken away from, that's been done over the last 8 years. No, nobody wants to raise taxes. Well, that's the problem we're in right now, because for the last 8 years, the taxes were not raised, not even to keep up with inflation or the 2% tax cap. We are so far behind the 8 ball right now that if we hiccup once, we're gonna be in trouble. Nobody wants to borrow money. We don't have a choice, sure. Like I said, we can spend some of the reserves, which is fine and dandy until they're gone, and then how are we gonna replenish the reserves? And everybody comes up with this misinformation, and thank you for mentioning it too, Mark. Like I always said, if it's on Facebook, it's gotta be true. God must have wrote it, right? And there is so much misinformation put out there that is basically, the reason I don't go on it, because most of it I know factually is outright lies and made up stories. For what reason, I will never understand. And it's like I said, with a lot of this stuff, it just goes on and on and on and on. And, yeah, I don't know how long I'm gonna be on this planet. You know, and like I said, I'm here for one reason, is to make the town better, not to kick every damn employee in the ass every time I get a chance. Nobody, as good as the people we've got know anything. I mean, you know, I think it was Rick said it, yeah. Have finances here, you get some kid out of high school to run it. You probably get some kid out of wood shop to do your job. You know, we probably got people here that could probably do brain surgery on the weekends. Not a bad idea. And it's like I said, it's gotten to the point, it has gone totally overboard. And I will agree exactly what you said and what you said. We gotta stop, and I'll tell you, I don't care if anybody likes it or not. The bullshit politics is what everything is involved in right now. There is no doubt in my mind, and I'll tell you, the town is gonna go to hell for it. And I said this at the last meeting. Who is gonna pay the price for all this? Every person sitting in this room and every single taxpayer
Let me
is
ask
gonna
you a
pay for all
question.
this.
So you said you wanted us to stop playing politics and, you know, you don't enjoy doing that. So last few budgets that you've been a part of, you said that you voted in favor of or against?
I didn't say anything whether I did or I didn't. In 8 years, I only voted for one budget because I had to. And I had too many problems with all of them, mainly due to the fact that we were falling further and further and further behind. And listen, you know, Vern, I've listened to all the stories. The only way I can put it, I think we ought to roll up the sidewalks, don't even bother paving or fixing the sewers, because nobody can afford to live in a town of Chippewa. Everybody is starving to death, don't know where their next meal is coming from. We have got more problems more programs to help these people out in the town of Chickawaga. It's a senior citizen center. There's so many assistance places. Yeah, believe me, there might come a day where I may not be able to afford to live in my own home, but if that's the case, so be it. A lot of people don't want homes anymore. They don't want the maintenance. A lot of people can't do the maintenance to homes anymore. And it's by their choice. And the biggest thing, nobody takes into consideration, believe it or not, we've got an elderly population in this town, don't we? Anybody think about the people that pass away on a yearly basis? Quite a few. Quite a few. I think over 65, I think we've got roughly 19,000 people. The number has fallen as the rest of the population ages. And it's like I said, I guess nobody can afford anything in the town of Chickawaga. And I'll tell you personally, I haven't seen it. I know a heck of a lot of people that are basically my age that are still doing quite well. A lot of them have got their retirements. A lot of them invested well. And it's like I said, and the biggest thing I really have to laugh about, I can name 4 of them if I wanted to on the north side of town that have got homes in Florida, spent 6 months out of the year, and they're the biggest crybabies you ever heard in your life because they don't want to pay taxes, period. But they want all the benefits and will not give anything up.
If I could say something,
Councilman Jazinski, you're recognized.
thank you. I agree, Jerry. There are some seniors that are doing very well in this town, and there are people that are doing very well in this town. You so happen to be one of them. But there is a food bank we have that help the poor people in this town. Our poverty rate's going up in this town. We lead the county in foreclosures. So if we keep on doing the things we've been doing in the past, we can only expect the same results. I understand we don't want to make this about politics, but people voted for myself, voted for you and the rest of the board because of what we stand for. So it's okay to have your opinion, but scaring people and making people think that, everybody, all we do is talk bad about everybody. That's not so much true. Even Brian said that there are some people that, we don't see as favorable. And there are some good people that do good work in this town, but, there are a pretty large portion of people in this town that are against raising taxes. And those so happen to be the people that voted for myself that want me to voice their opinions as you do. So, we want to give people a hand up, not a handout. We don't want to raise the poverty rate in this town. We don't want to raise the foreclosure rate in this town. Yes, we want to fix the roads, but raising taxes is only going to hurt that class of people that are struggling right now, that need the food banks, the veterans that are homeless on the streets. We're eliminating homeless shelters for veterans, but we're talking about raising taxes and making it harder for these people to live in this town. This is the town of Chickawaga. There's a standard of living here. Anybody can come and live here, but there has to be a standard here. And, people come to a town of Chickawaga because it is a great place. There's no doubt about it. I mean, that's why I live here, and I'm sure that's why we all live here, because we love this town. But, to say that, all we do is scare people and try to make it political, well, that's the realm we live in. That's who we are. We're politicians. And we stand up for the people who voted for us. So now that you have opposition, you act like, that's wrong. People have voiced their opinions, and, as Barb, Vern, and myself, we're the newcomers here on the board. People want change in this town. And, raising taxes is the wrong type of change. Fixing the road, sure, let's fix them. But let's do it within the means that's not going to adversely affect people's wallets, that isn't going to raise the poverty rate, that isn't going to force people to use those food banks that Mr. Pilarski helps out with. So, that's how I feel about raising taxes. We just can't do it.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Jazinski.
So like the ARPA funds, if we get off our political soapboxes and move forward and our political platforms, how are we funding 11.5 million, or what projects are we kicking
Yeah.
out? Looking forward again.
And so, Mr. Crystal,
So that's what I wanted to suggest, to get back. So obviously, there's a lot of contention with the paving list. Take the paving list off the table right now, because as I said earlier, that money is to buy materials. Okay, all right, we can revisit that. Me and Rick will look at it. We'll do what we need to do it. That's to buy materials. That's not time sensitive. The other things, to Councilmember Volarski's point, are time sensitive. Traditionally, our support bids go out in February, okay? And they're awarded at the end of March. We're now in April. Okay, so if we're gonna achieve anything on those two other lists, we need to make a decision as soon as possible. Okay, so I suggest, let's let paving go for now, okay? We'll revisit that, okay? The other two items, if we're gonna get any semblance of something done this season, we need to get back to those, back to drainage, back to sanitary improvements,
yeah,
okay?
it's, we've been talking through the sanitary bond here. And Councilmember Thompson had brought up the possibility of using some reserves to cover a part of that. I appreciate the concrete recommendation, really. So let's get back to that. Is there a dollar amount you were thinking of? What do you want to, do you think a half, a quarter, a portion?
1.4.
Yeah, are you reconsidering it entirely? Where's your mind? Just to get something else on the table, because as I said in my counter offer, so to speak, to what was turned down, I said, hey, let's use some highway reserves to do paving, but keep the other two pieces as they were. I'm open to anything as a point of discussion. So I know you brought up something concrete that we can chew on and hopefully get to a bonding answer on this piece. So what do you think?
So earlier you mentioned that 2 million and the 1.4 are directly connected. Is that correct?
Correct, with the consent order, correct, yes.
Okay. So the 2 million, we're bonding no matter what. The 1.4, I would love to see what Brian is comfortable, because I don't want to be negligent on that side. You know, obviously I would take his advice and see what he's comfortable taking from that to go towards that.
From the sewer fund
From the sewer reserves.
reserves, right?
So that's what
Yeah.
I'd like to explore if we can.
Okay, I mean, we can add, you know, it's part, you know, we talked about being politicians and being elected officials, you know, part of our job is to make tough calls. We can ask the finance director for a specific amount. I think it's on us. Maybe we go at the 437 and do the million through the bond, and the 437, we consider pulling that from the reserves. I think the answers have got to come from us up here. I understand we're talking about the history of what went on before new board members got here. And we're talking about past sins in terms of budgets and that. And, you know, I do that a little bit of that myself, you know, we all do. But, you know, I'm thinking just, I gotta get my soapbox for a second. Thinking about some of the board members that have sat up here before I got here years and years ago. I don't think it's fair to assume that none of them knew what they were doing and weren't paying any attention. We've had great people sit up on this board, and Thomas Johnson is one of them, Councilman Tom Johnson. Some of them, you might hear that name and say, you know, but he was a good man, and he really knew what he was doing for this town, and he could be very tough to deal with sometimes. We talk about the Galleria Mall and why there's drainage basins for that, and how that was done as well as it was. It's because Tom Johnson was involved as he was on that. And he's just one example. You can point to other people that have been on this board over the years that have been good watchdogs for the taxpayers and been a good example of how to be an elected official. You know, I don't think it's fair to characterize all of them as just kicking cans down the road, because in their eyes at that time, they weren't dealing with crumbling infrastructure in the way that we are. So just had to say my piece on that. But going back to the concrete idea, maybe we take the 437 from the reserves, and then we do the rest through a bond at 3.5 instead of 3.9. What do you think of that? But so, I mean, if the goal is to be a little more reliant on cash reserves and less reliant on racking up the bonds.
Brian,
Councilman Finsky?
I got a question for Mark. Basically, on the list, we've got Beale Avenue and Danbury sewer replacement, Homer's,
I don't mean to interrupt you, Councilmember Kaminsky, that's on the storm side. So we'll get to that in the storm drainage part. We're still talking on the sanitary side,
Oh, okay.
the sanitary bonds, yes.
Could
Yes.
you repeat your,
Sure, I mean, it's just, and again, you know, I'm looking for input from the rest of the board. One of the, you know, the concern is bonding all 3.9. Why don't we bond 3.5 and take 437 out of the sewer reserves? That gets us to a place where we have a healthy reserve fund still for if we have an emergency at Main Pump or at Harlem Road. And we don't borrow the 3.9. We take nearly $500,000 off of what we're borrowing. What do you guys think of that?
How many roads would that cover then?
no, we're doing
we
sanitary.
can't-
Roads, it's
Sewers.
We
sewer.
can't pave roads with sanitary sewer budget.
Okay, so how many sewers would that cover?
That covers the balance we owe on lining 27 miles of sanitary sewer, Councilmember Jasinski. And,
So we'd be able to line 27 miles of sewers, you said?
well, again, sheds 9 and 10 equal roughly 27 miles. We had a grant for 5 mil. The bid came in at 6.4. That 1.437 is the match, the 5 million on that grant. Okay, so that's gonna support the 27 miles we're lining in sheds 9 and 10.
So I think while that thought is on the table, are we all in a place where we want to do all 3 pieces of this work? Is there any opposition to doing one of these 3 items? Because it's got a price tag of $3.9 million. If there's opposition to one of these, this is a good time to say, hey, I don't want to raise taxes, so we shouldn't do this thing.
I don't think we should raise taxes.
Okay, are you suggesting we take these items all off the table?
I'm suggesting we prioritize them worst to, you know, to least and use whatever available funding we have. Mark said there was some monies left over from doing storm sewer shed number 3. So we have some money left over from that. How much do we have left from that, Mark?
There is no money left over that, Councilmember Jasinski. We completed all that stuff in ARPA. So we actually have, that is the 5.4 million in ARPA. We started it last year. We spent approximately 2 million of it. We're gonna complete that work this year at the balance of 3.4 million that was allocated through ARPA. So there is no leftover dollars, so to speak, from sewer shed number 3.
So the money's there, we just didn't use it yet for the rest of that project.
Correct, yes, the contract has started. We have not completed because it's a large project at $5.4 million. We're addressing 2,600 lateral connections.
Supervisor,
This,
Councilmember, actually, Mr. Bowen, then Mr. Thompson.
I just want to clarify for everybody regarding the match for the grant funded project for the lining and sewer shed 9 and 10. Like Mark said, it's a $6.4 million project. Under the grant application that we filed with the state for the WQIP grant, we agreed at that time that we would pay the 25% match. So we've already committed to paying our required match on it, which is the $1.4 million.
I appreciate that clarification. Thank you. Councilmember Thompson, you're up.
of the 500,000 for the Genesee Street Pump Station, 65% of the 500,000 is going to be reimbursed?
Ultimately, it all will be reimbursed as future development comes in, okay? So we're gonna get 65% up now when the development is happening now, Councilmember Thompson, and then as other development comes in, when they wanna look at the vacant parcels there, they're gonna have to pay a portion of that to reimburse the balance, okay? So we looked at the area as a whole, so to make sure that the station's rebuilt to have the capacity to take on additional flows from future development that may happen out.
That's essentially, oh, go ahead.
Is that on the property where they are now on Genesee or Transit?
No, that's taking in all the flows that's coming from the development and transit. That's already factored in. Right. But
So I guess I'm confused. Which development are you speaking of?
Well, there was a potential hotel tossed around going in there. That was in the review process. Correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, that didn't,
Yes.
that, you know, and there's another condominium development across the street was in the review process. So there's other developments that are in the process coming down the pipeline, okay? On Genesee Street, not necessarily Transit Road. But so all those flows convey to that same pump station on Genesee Street.
And is this through Young Development?
Young Development is the one development that's gonna cover 65% of that cost now.
So they're gonna be the ones that will be doing future developments?
No, they're next. There's other developers looking at other parcels in and around that area on Genesee Street.
And
Okay.
us as a town are gonna impose them?
We're gonna exactly, correct,
Okay.
yes, yep. So everyone pays their fair share of the upgrades to that station, yes, yep.
So we've got another bond to discuss. What do we think about moving on to the next one and just sitting on this for just a moment to say, maybe we use some sewer reserves to reduce that? Is everyone okay with moving on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna have to come back to this. So one of the third bond, we talked about the roads. We talked about the sanitary bond. The third one up we have is the highway drainage bond, and that was for $5.5 million. And half of the cost of that were associated with a sewer trunk replacement. We had $500,000 for materials to support highway department daily operations. We had $1.5 million for Shanley Street, which is associated with the CDBG funding to support that, and that was a road rehab. We have $350 for Beale Avenue. And then there is $150,000 for bridge rehabilitation at Gallery Drive, and we discussed that previously, how we're gonna get flagged by New York for the condition of that bridge, and that's something else we have to do. All that together added up to $5.5 million, so, I mean, this gets us into the conversation we have again, you know, with this highway drainage bond, we would have to use highway reserves if we didn't want to bond it all, is that correct? Okay,
Yes.
and, you know, we're already talking about the possibility of that with the roads. So is there a particular project this board is choosing to take off this list to reduce the cost? And if we want to do everything, is there a proposal for reserves to use? The proposal I put on the table was to reconsider what had been voted down. There's the most expensive project, we have a lot of liability on that. But I'm open to considering putting that off till next year if we have to. I don't think we should, but that's basically where we're at. Councilman Kaminsky.
Maybe Mark can answer this. All of these are basically, under the highway fund. Sewer replacements, are those outside the roadway or beneath it?
They're all, it varies, they're all underneath the roadway, obviously, but some of these, the large one is actually in the rear yards of homes.
That's one
Okay,
on Kemp.
that's correct, yes, yeah.
I'm more concerned about these other ones, so I assume if you're gonna replace the sewers, you're gonna dig up the roadway.
Correct,
After it's done, it's gonna have to be paved.
correct,
We have to do those together.
correct.
There's no escape on that. And the only concern I've got, where's this one, North William Street, Harlem to Starlight?
So that one, we've already decided that we're gonna put over to next year, okay? So that's where we're currently lining on shed number 9 and 10, kind of the same area, but through our lining investigation, we found out that the storm sewers there are clay tile variety, okay? And they are seriously deteriorated that need to be replaced, okay? So we cannot even line those sewers and bring them back to fully operational, okay? But once again, before we would even consider milling and paving those streets, we need to address the storm side. We're addressing the sanitary side now. It's part of our consent order sheds 9 and 10. But again, we need to address the storms in that area as well, especially the north side of William Street, basically
Right.
from Harlem Road to the old orphanage property.
Yeah, basically to Starlight.
Correct, yes, yep.
Yeah, I'm really surprised because William Street County Road, isn't it?
Williams County, correct, yes, yep. You know, well, years ago, monies were invested, we had major trunks that cross William Street to
Right.
get to Cayuga Creek on the other side of the
Right.
90.
A lot of history, yeah, I know.
Oh, God, yeah, St. Felix Storm Sewer System, yeah, yep.
So going back to some of these other projects, you know, we start with the top here. we've got community development money that's gonna do some work on Shanley Street
Curve.
and curving. So we were talking about using $1.5 million to do the drainage work on Shanley and to repave that street, button it all up. You got a full road rehab over there essentially, right?
Correct.
So there's, just like we were talking about the WQIP grant with the sanitary bond. Now, when we're getting into highway drainage, we're dealing with community development, some of the money that they're able to pair up to get this work done here. It's one of those things that we decide not to do it, then we gotta get over to community development and figure out where to put the curbing money.
Correct.
And to check in to make sure it's not too late to reallocate that, because we do have hearings that come before the board about how to spend community development money, and that's already happened. Those hearings have already happened. So materials for day-to-day operations, is that just for the items on this list, or is that for everything?
That is, for example, highway last year, we spent $654,000 to buy material for Rick's guys to do their job.
Right, we
Okay.
talked at the beginning of this meeting how there's no 650K.
There's
in the lines of the
120K in there,
budget.
exactly. So
70% of it's going to the workers and making sure they're taken care of in terms of
that's
wages,
correct.
benefits, and honoring our contracts with them.
Correct.
Then you get down to Beale Avenue. I was over on Beale Avenue myself to see this flooding in person. Maybe a little month and a half ago, and we had our sanitation trucks running through. It was a garbage day, garbage floating all over the street. And Beale has been an issue for years, and the residents that I spoke with over there, one in particular, let me in her house to see what was going on, the smell of all the water, and has told me for years this has been an issue. We're on notice. Then we get over to Galleria Drive Bridge. That's the rest of it. So the big chunk of this is dealing with Kemp, and, that's a big liability for this town, and it's the reason why with these list of projects, think about community development, thinking about being flagged for a bridge. We were talking about even more projects than this initially. We pared it down to these. I'm all ears about what projects we should take off. I don't mean to lecture or scold, but we're talking a lot about what happened in the past and what we should do. It's like we have to put our nose to the grindstone. Are we doing all of this? And if so, if we're agreement on that, how do we pay
The Kemp Avenue, where are we getting the quote from for this dollar amount?
You're looking at them for me, based on what we've done in the past. So I quote up materials based on last year's pricing. Unfortunately, I just got this new pricing this year for HDPE piping. It's gone up 17%. Okay, so I now have to try to absorb that 70% in the quote that I gave you guys. Okay, in my 27 years of doing this, I haven't gone over once on any of my quotes. Okay, so I take pride in that. I stand behind that, and I'll try my best to make this work. Okay, in the world that we're now in. Okay, so we have an existing lining contract. I use those lining dollars for the 2 pieces of pipe I'm going to try to line. Okay, then there's X amount of feet that we have to replace. I have a price per foot for that pipe, and then the associated materials, stone, blacktop, catch bases, manholes, you name it, they get this all in the ground. And then estimate the labor costs based on last year's labor contract. Hopefully those numbers don't go up substantially when the new bids do get out, but this is all based on last year's pricing, okay?
And when you do get these prices, are they, from multiple companies, or is it just?
It varies from year to year, council members. So I've had as many as 7 bid this project. These projects, I've had as little as 1. Okay, it all depends on, and I anticipate the longer we wait, we're not gonna get a lot of guys and girls looking at this because their schedule is getting full. Okay, because like I said, we're now in April, okay, which means the price may go up, unfortunately for us. Okay, but it all depends on, again, contractor schedules, what they have in their calendar, what they already have booked, what their resources are, and so on and so forth. So there's really no concrete answer for that, but it fluctuates from anywhere from 1 to 7 based on historical average.
Thank you for that.
You got it, yep.
Any other questions on the scope of work? So, is there it's going back to this, I named one project that I would be willing to seriously consider pulling off to reduce the cost of this. I don't think it's wise. Is there any support to join me in that?
I'll just caution, I don't want to interrupt here,
Yeah.
but the picture that Councilman Pilarski showed, that is in the rear yard to Jerry's point, and we have a steel plate and a barricade sitting on top of that.
I hear you, and that's the
Okay.
reason that I think we should be bonding out the scope of work at $5.5 million.
Right. The homeowner is a really nice gentleman. We spoke to him numerous times. He understands our dilemma. But again,
Yeah, and I will be here all night as long as it takes. We gotta get past criticisms of what used to happen and what did happen.
you're looking at it right there,
And we
Jerry.
gotta
That's it right there.
answer,
Yep.
we gotta have an answer to what we're gonna do here. You know, we're up here to solve problems, and again, don't mean to lecture, give anyone a hard time, it's just, you know, people voted for us and put us here to solve problems, and if the alternative is to do less, I just need to hear what scope is acceptable as a consensus.
So this full depth reconstruction of 2 town-owned streets, is that full tear down, get in, swap out the drainage, fix it all up, and then repave it all up?
Yes, it's new storm, new sanitary, new curbing, new aprons, and tree planting, again, depending on requests.
Is that something that could get done in just one summer? Or is that a split project to go 2 summers and we could split the price on?
Well, that again would be similar to Wallace and Lemoyne. Again, depending on season, depending on how other projects go, that's why we did Lemoyne in last year and Wallace in 2022. So to your point, again, Erie County Water ready to replace the water mains on those streets. Okay, so that's already been addressed with Erie County Water. They did a project independent of us 2 years ago. And again, the road profile, the center line's up here, aprons are here, sidewalks are here, all the water lays on there, freezes down there, slip and falls, the whole 9 yards, just getting back into our sanitary system. Again, those streets go back to the 40s. Okay, and we know both the sanitary and storm are clay tiles in nature. So again, they're right next to each other. And again, hypothetically, we don't pave. I anticipate we can get both of those done this year. Okay, because we'll have resources available to move some assets there. Okay, especially on the trucking line side. Listen, we own 17 tandems. We don't pave, those 17 tandems are going to work. Okay,
The highway superintendent looks like he wants to be recognized. You're up.
I mean, we've been doing this for what, 2 months now?
A month and a half.
Okay, it's from that day out, the times, the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
The price is going up as we wait here, but this is costing us money every day we wait. It's got to make a decision. We got to either vote on it. We got to do, make your minds up on where we're going to spend this money, but we got to get through this. We got to get this done. The clock is ticking. Money and time to be able to complete these jobs. It's simple. I can't explain it any simpler.
If we would use any reserves funds for this particular project, what dollar amount are we considering or could consider?
That's a great question.
6 million in there, so in reality, you
The-
could consider up to 6 million, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend that.
No,
But
no,
there
right,
is
not the
6
whole
million
thing.
in that reserve fund, if I'm correct.
This gets to the road question. If we're going to use 750 of highway reserves for roads, and the last I heard in this discussion on that, there was nobody named specific streets we were pulling off. The concern I have, and I'm open to suggestions, the concern I have personally is I don't see us digging any further into our highway reserves to cover this scope of work here. I'm worried about how fast we drain it down. We've been draining it down for 2 years now. And one of the big tasks I have in writing a budget this year to put up for board consideration is to address the highway fund situation. So I would put it back to the board members to name a dollar amount, not to kick the can, but my personal opening suggestion on this piece would be 0. If there's a higher dollar amount, I'm all ears from any board members to hear what they think it should be, and let's try to find a dollar.
And
Yeah,
then-
I'd be on board with find the dollar amount, but I'd need to find out the cost of the aggregate first.
Okay, do you have a recommended dollar amount? We've been here 2.5 hours, and I'm just looking for specifics. I appreciate your input.
Yeah, specifically, I'd like to see the cost of the aggregate and see how many yards we can get for how many dollars. What is the current cost of the aggregate?
those quotes that I gave that you guys have are real numbers. Okay, like I said, I haven't gone over in 27 years. I've come close. Okay, I've saved a little bit here. I borrowed from there, so to speak, to get things done. I haven't gone over, but those are real numbers based on my 27 years of doing this.
If we're talking, I mean, if we're talking doing a partial trunk, are you considering half, a quarter? We just need some general guidance on what to consider here.
And again, if I can interject in my expert opinion, Kemp is all or nothing, because it's compromised. The second I touch it, I'm never gonna be able to marry up to the old and new.
I agree, I saw the
Okay.
photos, I
Yeah.
saw the photos,
So-
it's just,
And I'm not trying to, I'm just saying, if
No.
you want to take a tape, I'm just telling you, that's not where you can say, hey, I'll give you $1.5 million. You know, can you start it? It's all or nothing as far as I'm concerned,
I-
just because of the condition.
I
okay?
hear you, as chair of the meeting, I feel I've got an obligation to take every recommendation
Sure.
seriously, and I'm entertaining this seriously, the idea that we're gonna do a partial trunk reconstruction while we already have the people and the machinery over there, as short-sighted as I feel that would be. I'm taking the idea seriously, and like,
All right, I may suggest then, maybe if we can pull 500,000 or as much as 1 mil from the reserve fund and bond the rest. That's a suggestion.
yeah, it's, so to jump on that, thank you. Are we considering $1 million of highway reserves just for this bond, or are we thinking $1 million total between this and any potential roads? Because I can go for the latter, and it could, you know, because my worry would be doing 750 on roads and then an additional $1 million. In my personal opinion, that's a little steep, but I'm willing to take some reserves if we have to do some of the sewer work. I think that's worth serious consideration.
And it is a priority.
Yeah,
I would agree. I wouldn't want to take more than $1 million out of there for both projects combined. So where it goes to out of those two projects, we're gonna have to bond for the rest of it anyway, so. At 500 or 1 million and 0, but still bond the other one.
yeah.
I would go that route.
So, I mean, we should wrap back around to the road discussion while we're thinking about this. So,
With the paving.
with the paving, yeah, so if we're talking $1 million from reserves, basically talk between the road, if we're gonna pave, I mean, that, I've not heard anybody remove a single street. I'm assuming at this stage in the discussion, where there's general support from everybody in the room to pave all these streets. If we're gonna scale it back, you know, let's talk about how to do that, but between the paving and the highway drainage bond, if we used $1 million from reserves to get this bond down to 4.5, or we got the paving down to 1.25, I would say we take this paving down to 1.25 million. And then work this highway drainage bond at the 5.5, because it's got a longer payback period. It gives us a little bit more flexibility in terms of what to do with the next budget. That would be my preferred approach to go about it.
So this paving list here, we do have, a few asterisks. I think you automatically start with those streets. Those need to get done because those are tied to drainage, sanitary sewer improvements.
Okay,
Those are no matter what. But again, there are some streets on here that I drove down in the phase 1 that if you told me my street was going to be paved next year or in 2 years from now, I'd say, okay, great, thank you. And I wouldn't even say another word. So there are some streets, I don't want to pave just to pave. There are some streets that can wait a year or two and, modify this list.
yeah,
Remember that cost of setting up.
yeah,
Yeah, well, what about the, this list that you have for next year? What if there are streets on there that's the same,
so,
that don't necessarily need to be paved?
going back to, it's,
That's that mobilization cost. That's why we're grabbing a group like that to bring the cost down per square foot of these jobs.
So the mobilization is
It's a big part of the
taking
job.
our
All the
equipment
yes.
from here
Yep,
to a site.
to the sites,
We're paying all of those people anyhow, correct?
labor wise, yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
So, I don't know, maybe you can just elaborate a little bit more.
So
just-
is any of this proposed work 100% the town do it? this proposed work, are the town employees able to handle the full workload? Or
Yes, if I can just interject, I know I'm not a sitting council member or a supervisor, but let me throw a proposal out there
Do you
anyway.
want to be? I'm trying to inject some levity.
All right,
Don't do it.
let me
I
throw a
wasn't
proposal out
giving
there
that
anyway, okay? All right, so clearly there's not an appetite for $11.4 million, okay? That's clear, all right? Let me and Rick worry about what we pay with the money we have, okay? What I mean by that is the state money that's coming, with the idea that next year's paving list is gonna grow and cost more, okay? All right, to keep that caveat in the back of your mind that next year when we sit up here, I'll probably be talking about 3 million worth of paving, not 2.25.
I'm
Okay.
fine with Paying our employees overtime.
Right.
If it's in-house, I'm fine with
You
that.
know, so let's just put the paving to bed, okay? We need to focus on the drainage components of it, because like Councilmember Thompson suggested, again, if I get the drainage done, then I can pave those streets that are dotted on this list, okay? If we don't do the drainage, I can't pave them anyways.
Right.
Okay, so I don't wanna continue to waste time, you know, debating the paving. Let me and Rick worry about the paving. We'll bring that back. We have to anyways by law, submit a plan that you guys ultimately approve. Okay, we did that last year, the year before, and so on and so forth, okay? Let me and Rick deal with that, okay? We're not gonna ask for any money, with the idea that it will cost more down the road, okay? Just so you, I'm gonna preface that by saying that. It will cost more to pave in 25 and 26, okay? But then we can move some resources around to knock out what Councilman Pawarski said, I'll move more resources around to knock out the drainage part of this and the sanitary part, because keep in mind, highway helps out sanitary, sanitary helps out highway when it comes to in-house stuff, okay? But those are the two caveats that if we're gonna get anything done this year, we need to put those to bed as to what you're comfortable with and what we're gonna fund, okay? I'll let you guys decide how you wanna fund it, but again, are we good with the 3.95 and are we good with the 5.5? Because then I can start writing contracts, getting things in place, get out the bid and get things going, because the clock is well behind us already as far as getting that stuff done.
I've already voted on it, yes on it once. I mean, this goes back to why we're having this meeting tonight. If there's broad support for these two, I'll happily put in the bond again for, for another round of votes and to see what happens. But if there's not support, I mean, this is the place to say, no, we don't want to do it at all. Or we don't want to do the 5.5 and we don't want to do the 3.9. We gotta vocalize that there. The fear I have is we start asking the folks like Mark to write these contracts, and then we come up for a vote, and then we say no. We ask him to do this work, and he's got under the impression we're gonna go ahead with this stuff, and if we don't, then we've wasted his time. And if we're not gonna do it, okay, we just need, like I said at the beginning, we just need to settle that here. We're not doing it. So, is there any opposition to going ahead with these two pieces?
I still, like I told you, we voted on it once, and that's where I feel it should stay.
I think the sanitary,
I'm okay with doing any work as long as it doesn't raise taxes.
Okay, thank you.
Let's vote on it. We gotta get this done.
Yes,
I think everybody understands it
We
now
don't need to get it done.
out there. Let's get it done.
I mean, this gets back to it, like, it was just said, we don't need to get it done. This is exactly the concern that I have, that we leave with an understanding tonight and all of a sudden it'll be different when we have a resolution in front of us.
So can we do a straw poll right now, and put our feet to the fire, is if we were to bond 8.5 million and then out of reserves, take 450,000 for sanitary and 500,000 for drainage? That would total both prices to cover those projects for their paving. Mark and Rick will work on that and figure that out. And if we can at least give a thumbs up and say, hey, let's start this ball moving forward. That, or we're waiting another week only to walk in here and find out that, hey, it's gonna be voted down or it's not supported. If it's not supported, say that right now too.
And again, if we're gonna bond, not for 30, 40 years.
Nobody ever said that.
Yes,
Nobody
on the
ever
one
said 30 or 40
resolution,
years.
on the one resolution, it was.
The resolutions, I'm sorry, can I?
Yeah,
speak?
yeah, if you can speak to the bonding dollar amounts
Right.
and the year amounts and what that means.
Finally.
The bond resolutions state for the period of probable usefulness of them, what you can, what you're allowed term wise and what you can bond, but we will not bond for 40 years of anything. What, you know, for the sewer stuff, the initial plan was 20 years, of a bond. And, for the drainage, highway drainage was 15 years. So that's the plan as it stands right now. Again, these are, there's laws or certain, you know, guidelines in place that say, you know, that they don't want you to be bonding for things that if they don't have a life that, you know, that you would be bonding longer than the life of the actual asset that you're putting in the ground or
Right.
something. So, right now, I mean, you know, a lot of people are making it sound like we're bonding for like not long-term stuff, for operating type stuff. We're bonding for assets that are gonna be long-term within the town of Cheektowaga, you know, infrastructure. And, you know, it's, you're gonna pay for it in less time than the asset is gonna be in the ground and functional.
Councilman Pilarski, to your question, I can go for that with the caveat, I don't think we should use any highway reserve funds to do sewer work if that's the case, if we're gonna just take off road paving entirely. I would say we pull $1 million, up to $1 million out of the highway reserves to cover some road paving. Get between the state money and $1 million out of highway reserves. We can get 2 out of the 4 phases of the road work done, reduce our costs this year, take advantage of the mobilization, being in the neighborhoods, and get our, you know, on this list, it says the length of the road paving, get the per foot paving down to the lowest cost possible.
So what you're recommending is a 3.95 for sanitary, 5 million for drainage,
$5.5 million for drainage.
for bonding, but
Yeah.
$500,000 coming from.
Oh, 5 million for drainage, $500,000 from the
$500,000
sewer
coming from the
reserves.
sewer, from the reserve, and then
And-
another
and I-
$500,000 for paving.
And
to
at that
go up
number,
to 1 million.
430 something was the number I threw up there. If that's, it's about roughly $500,000.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
then they would have paving money to go with out of the reserve.
yeah, I would say, and then there's some paving money if we have to take it out of the reserves.
I like that idea.
So you wanna take how much from the highway for paving?
I would say, look, if we're not gonna bond, and I think we should bond it, I would say $1 million. And then we take no money from, no more than $1 million from the reserves to deal with this work
Yes.
It's
And
for the
again-
For
paving,
the paving.
for the
Yeah.
paving.
for the paving, and
Okay.
0 from reserves to deal with bonding.
Okay, so no bonding on the paving.
If the concern is borrowing 11.6, I'd say no bonding on the paving, just figure out a different way to pay for the road work, or we just leave them for next year. And those roads either get delayed or done at a higher cost, and for my part, I think we're gonna have to delay some of them.
I'd be in favor of that, Brian.
We need, anything with the
So-
asterisks on it that you looked at, we need to pay. You gotta throw something in there for this paving.
Mhm.
So that's where we would take out of the reserve is what
Yeah.
Supervisor was
Right.
saying, with $1 million out of the reserve for paving, and then all the other, the drainage and sanitary is completely bonded.
I don't think it's wise to keep taking money from this highway fund. If it gets us to an answer, I will support it, but we're continually, the criticism of draining down these funds and all this, we're continuing down the same road when we've done bond after bond for road paving. And if there's 2 phases we're gonna pull off, I mean, there was criticism of some aspects of the phase 1. There's receivers over on Jessica and Lou that are in rough shape. We're gonna have to do some we're gonna have to do drainage work there for sure. And Jessica's probably taken care of or in midst already,
The boys
right?
on it right now, exactly.
So we're gonna have the same situation on Jessica that we have on the dotted roads.
In those pictures you've seen with the bad receivers,
Yeah,
there's at least 200 of those. That's just pictures of 2. You can't just say, okay, fix them 2.
We did 266 last year. That's in the report, receiver wise. And again, I'll just interject this. Forgive me for doing it. Keep in mind, like I said earlier in the presentation, we are gonna have to dip into, unless you want to raise taxes, we're gonna have to dip into the highway fund balance of almost 3 million for our operational budget for next year. And Brian can attest to that, Brian Kraus. Okay, so again, 2.9 is already committed unless we want to go back to raising taxes 85% in highway.
And that coupled with, let's say for the sake of argument, another blizzard. I mean, what did we spend, 4.5
This
or
is-
4 million on that?
Correct.
For
And how long-
in 22, yeah,
And how long does that reimbursement take to get from FEMA?
Could take
still
years.
working,
Still not even
Yeah.
getting it, so.
still working on
Let's say
it.
for the sake of argument, we're hit with a blizzard, it's 4.5 out of 6 million if we don't take a dime out of it.
Mhm.
But if we take a million out, now we've got 5 million, that's 4.5, for that blizzard. Who knows what it'll be for another one? We don't know, you don't know what you don't know. But God forbid, we can't bond a blizzard cleanup. This is an opportunity, we could bond this.
That would be criminal to bond a blizzard cleanup.
You can't, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Not literally, I should
Yeah.
specify that,
Right.
that was figurative, you know?
Right.
No, but I think, just to throw my 2 cents in, I've listened to this, so I hear once more, we're not gonna raise taxes. Anybody been in a grocery store lately? Anybody?
No, Jerry, none of us have been to the store.
Neither here nor there, but prices have gone up astronomically. I know mine have. Even on the products I sell, even on the products I buy. And if anybody thinks that we're gonna drain now these reserves, oh, we're not gonna raise taxes. How's that gonna work?
Mhm.
Anybody ever hear of a control board that they had in the county and the city years ago? That would probably be our next step, where somebody else takes over.
The county didn't bond for these projects, though.
Do you mind? Do you mind at all?
No, we could share, we could talk back and forth, we're having healthy conversation, I'm not being rude, we're just talking.
Inevitable when I look at the last 8 years and the lack of budget increases, and even if you do it at 2% a year, we weren't even close to that. And all of a sudden, we're supposed to absorb all of this. What are people willing to give up? What do we start cutting as far as services? No, anything goes.
That's a
Before-
great comment, Jerry. We might have to cut. We might. I mean, you're right. Things are getting more expensive. I mean, it's getting harder. We have to make cuts.
We've been here, like, I see the audience thinning out. We've been here nearly 3 hours.
We're beating this to death. We
And
need
it's
to
o-
make a decision.
Sometimes it takes a long time to reach decisions. But I've asked repeatedly, what are we going to cut? Tell me the name of the streets. Tell me the projects. Tell me what we're not doing. Nobody.
Well, maybe we need that study then, Brian. Maybe we need
Thank you.
we need that study because,
It's your turn next if you want to speak, but
thank
please don't
you.
interrupt.
Go ahead.
For 3 hours now, what are we going to cut? And there's general criticisms of spending too much, general criticisms of taxation, general criticisms of some projects have to wait. No one is specifying projects. If this is too much money, tell me what we're not going to do. Mr. Crystal said, hey, let's put paving off. I'm willing to name specific projects maybe we should put off. No one is naming them. Our job up here, you and all of us up here, is to make those hard decisions, not to dump it on the town employees and then treat them like shit when there's criticisms of those decisions. It's on us that are elected to make those hard calls. So, Mr. Jazinski, would you like to follow that up?
Yes. So I like the idea of not bonding to do the paving projects. And, I know we were saying about not doing a study for the roads. I mean, maybe we need to do it. I mean, because, I saw the roads that you had on your Facebook Live. I mean, you didn't walk down my street, and I can tell you what, my street's at least as bad as some of those roads. And we know there's some other roads. So I think just for us to spitball what roads we're going to do, I don't think, it's fair enough. I personally don't think that we have enough information to, make these decisions in sound mind. And you're right. There's going to be criticism regardless of what route we take. But I do like the idea that you proposed, not bonding for doing the pavement. Well, let's do that. And then let's adjourn and come back to the table because, you're right. We've been here for quite a bit of time. I mean, if we can agree to that, I think we've had some movement. Hold on. Let me finish.
Fair enough, continue.
So I just think that, you proposed a good idea. I'd like to, do that. I think that's a great idea. I'm willing to say yes to that. I think there's some type of movement on doing a project, but, bonding, as I said, we'll have beautiful roads, but, tax increase, we're post-COVID, the inflation's at the worst it's ever been. And as Mr. Kaminsky said, groceries are at an all-time high and, well, maybe we need to cut the project down. Sure, I'm sure we'd all love to pave all these roads and fix all these water systems and whatever, but maybe we can't do it all right now. Just like I said, I mentioned before, there's people that drain their 401ks. The poverty rate in Cheektowaga is rising. There's people that can't go on vacation. I mean, everybody has to make cuts, and including government. And
I hear you. This is the game that gets played up here that I'm done with. Is I've said we've got to take care of all these in the alternative proposal I put in the email. I mentioned, Ed, for the sake of compromise, that I'm willing to take the roads off the list. It all of a sudden magically becomes my idea. It is not my idea. I think we should be dealing with all of this work with bonding and not touching our reserves. I've been very clear on my position, and I would caution anybody up here not to misrepresent my position. When we talk about doing these roads out of reserves, that's part of reaching consensus. It isn't Brian Nowak's idea to all of a sudden say, forget it, we're not gonna pave the roads, because that'll be out there on Facebook along with the lies about inflating the rate of interest that we're gonna pay, saying that we're repaving roads from 2015 when they're dead-end streets, and these other nonsensical things that have gotten out there. So I just don't want my position misrepresented. Councilmember Pilarski.
All right, Supervisor, to your points there, that you were saying that no recommendations were given. I'm not giving recommendations of streets because my degree is not in engineering. That's these guys over here. So I leave that to them. What I do make a recommendation of is 9.4 million in bonding. That would include sanitation and drainage, and then 750K from the fund balance for paving, and let them figure out what streets for that 750K. I'd like to move forward with that. If it's got backing.
Is there any support for Councilmember Pilarski's recommendation?
Yeah, I can go along with that, Brian.
Got anybody else want to go along with that?
So again, we're gonna bond how much then? We're not gonna pull from any
9.4 million would be the total for sanitary and the storm
the
drainage.
drainage, okay.
That would all be bonded, and then take 750K out of fund balance for paving, and let these guys decide what streets are prioritized and need it most, or coincides with the projects already going on, so they're not ripping something up or not finishing it. That would not deplete our highway fund.
That would leave the sewer funds for Harlem Road in that?
Correct.
Ed?
Yeah, I don't have a problem.
Yeah, I'm not gonna micromanage and say what streets or what
Yeah.
sheds to do.
So it sounds like a first and second on a solution. Is there any other, is there opposition to that idea?
Yes.
Any
Okay,
concerns?
we've got opposition from Mr. Jazinski. Are you suggesting we bond less? I heard you, Councilmember Bukowski, I'm
Thanks,
sorry.
let him- that's
I'm
okay.
saying zero bonding, zero tax increases. As you had mentioned, we could rewind the tape and look at it. You
I
did
didn't
say,
mention zero bonding.
You
Don't
did-
misrepresent
you
my,
said, let me finish. You
you
said,
misrepresented my petition.
can I
Position
finish,
is
please?
What I said.
I know, can I finish, please? As you asked me to give you the decency, could you allot me the same, please?
Go ahead. You're lying about what I said, but go ahead.
I'm not, we could rewind it, Brian, but thank you. Yeah, so like you said, I'd be in favor of, not bonding for the road paving. And at least let's come to agreement with there. I mean, we're in the 10th hour here. Let's do it.
But you just said no. That's like.
You want to
so-
get some of this work done. What's the holdup? You just proposed something. You proposed something though. Let's do it. I'm in favor of it. Let's do it.
I'm lost whether you're.
Yeah, I'm honest to goodness lost right now.
I would like to add to my proposal here that we do a fundraiser and a bake sale, seeing that there's not gonna be any bonding or
Good idea.
pay for this, so like, what the hell are we gonna
Okay.
do?
All right.
Yeah.
San-
Councilmember, I got you next. Councilmember Bukowski wanted to be ready.
Any consideration to taking any reserve fund from the sewer to help with the sanitary work?
I think there was discussion about
Talked about that earlier.
430. I can go along with that
Okay,
if,
So I was thinking maybe 2.937, then $1 million from sewer, reserves.
Sewer's only got 5 million in it also.
That's pretty heavy.
To take 1 million out of the 6
Take
million.
well, there's only 5 million in sewer. So that would be 1/5 of that, and
And go for $500,000.
Or
We
the
can't
five
take
hundred thousand,
reserves
then that would cover
I
the
would
project
recommend
three.
highway not to.
Yeah,
They can't because they're not under storm surge.
No, we're talking about the sanitary bond now. We're talking about the 3.95. Right,
Totally
Yeah.
confused.
right, exactly.
it's, earlier we were talking about the 437,000. I could definitely go along with that. If we went to just a cool $500,000, I can also go along with that.
Right, because that would cover then the Genesee Street Pump Station.
Yeah.
Right, at 500,000.
Right, it would, yeah.
For that, just to cover that, and then bond the other two.
And and then it would be instead of 3.9, 3.4.
Isn't that Genesee Pump Station? Is that the one that's hooked up to that new development that Young did across the street from Salvatore's?
It is, yes.
I thought we were supposed to get some monies from Mr. Young for that. Whatever happened to that?
It's-
We've
already
said
talked-
No, that's
You sit in
absolutely
on the
correct.
same
You gotta,
meetings?
you gotta spend money to make money. It's absolutely correct, but we have to pay for it up front. We can't use Marlboro coupons.
Right. Do we have any commitment though, I'm asking?
May I, for a moment?
Yeah, you'd like to.
So-
We'll address that question in a second.
So if we take 437 from the sewer reserve funds and we bond the 3.5, is that correct?
Whether it's 3, 4, 3, 5, that gets us,
3, 4,
we're
yeah.
pretty close in
And we're
ballpark.
getting reimbursed 500,000
Mhm.
and then some down the road of that. I would be willing to entertain that. Because that includes the DC consent order.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I'm fine with that one.
I agree.
I'm good with that.
I think that deals with sanitary. So if we have a sanitary bond, with those conditions, we're all good?
And
Correct.
this shed 9 and 10, those are the last two
Correct,
to be paid for.
correct.
Because the other ones aren't done, but they're,
And the lining aspect,
Oh,
correct,
for
yes.
it.
We still have manual rehab to discuss down the road, but yes.
so
On
we
the
would have
mainline lining, that's correct,
all of our sheds done.
correct.
DEC consent order, done.
Not the whole order, but the lining part of it will be addressed, correct, yes,
So we'd be up to date
correct, yes,
until we hear something otherwise.
Correct.
from them.
yep, yep. And we just have the manholes to address. You'll see that on the original spreadsheet, Councilmember Thompson, the manholes we need to address for 9 and 10. I believe it about 1.2 million, okay? That got pushed to 2025, okay? That would be, to answer your question, that would be the end of what I call phase 1 of the order, okay? All right, so I just want to bring it to your attention. There is going to be a little bit down the road yet on the manhole re-ups for 9 and 10. We have to line the sewers first because we bring heavy equipment and whatnot through the manholes, they get to the sewer. And then once the sewers are lined, then we work on spraying the manholes and sealing them up,
So,
okay?
all right, so that deals with sanitary. 3, 4 instead of 3, 9. We're talking the 430 or a full $500,000. Which one of the two?
Sorry, what was the
Are
first?
you thinking about the 430 or straight 500,000?
500.
Okay.
Yeah, 4, 5.
All right, so the original proposed bond minus 500K out of reserves from the sewer bond, and
Right.
that seems to, we got consensus from the folks in the room?
And just to be clear, so even coming to this consensus,
Yeah.
nothing is concrete still. This is just, hey, we spoke about this and
Mhm.
come to an agreement that we think this is good, and now next meeting, we will put something forward. Is that,
The resolution.
understand.
Yeah,
will
it's,
come up.
I mean, we can put resolutions. I don't know if we have an opportunity at this point to put resolutions on regular order.
oh, since
I
it's
would-
tomorrow?
I would,
Or
if
today?
I would hope very much so that we have an opportunity for the public to do this. If not, we'd have to put them on the suspension rules and deal with it in that form. So,
It would definitely have to be the suspension of rules, but at this point, it's a straw vote, just kind of gauging where everyone's at. So he's got a green light to at least start the process tomorrow instead of waiting a week.
Right.
Now, if we agree on this and come back on Tuesday and it's a 3-3, we just wasted everybody's time and efforts on it. So
We've been doing that all night, Brian. We've just been wasting time because I'm not in favor of bonding. Let's get back to the Young question. And I have a question for Mark Crystal. Let me speak. You guys speak. You guys, you always cut into me. Give me the respect you
Get
want.
off the Zoom, because you're not following the Zoom law rules here that we have in
I am
town.
following the Zoom law, Brian. I'll see you Tuesday. I'll be there. I'll be sitting right next to you, I promise. But let me speak. Can I speak? Is it my turn?
Well, it's,
Stop
I-
interrupting me. Let me finish. Can I finish, please?
just a moment. So I get it. You don't want to do any bonding. We have heard you multiple times
He doesn't
tonight.
want to raise.
But
Yes, but I still want to have the conversation as everybody else is. You guys interrupt me. I give you the respect. I don't interrupt you. Jerry calls me out. I stop talking. Please let me speak. Can I speak?
don't give us the respect.
Can I speak, please?
Go ahead, sure.
Thank you. Mark, for the proposed work, what percentage of our town employees would do your proposed work?
On what aspect? The same.
All of it, everything that we're talking about tonight, every piece of project work, how much would be done by our town employees? What percentage?
50% ballpark. I mean,
Okay,
tough to equate.
50%.
Paving is close to 100. Okay, sanitary improvements is close to 0. Okay, and then the drainage is a combined 70-30-ish. Okay, so overall, you're
Okay.
looking at, I'm gonna call it 40%.
So about 40% of said work. So I just don't think that even if we did that work, that wouldn't necessarily warrant overtime if we're only doing 40% of the work. I question why we're not doing 90% of the work, and but that's what I say about that. But back to the Young question, Supervisor. What percentage are we supposed to get back from that pump station in Genesee from Young Development?
I know there were meetings in prior years where you were invited to and party of. I was hoping you can answer that question based on those meetings and your experience.
Well, I'm asking you. I asked you the question. Don't deflect. You have the number, just answer it. It's a simple question. I mean, if you know the answer, share it. If you don't, say you don't know it. That's all.
It's 2/3, and again, you were in these meetings, invited to these meetings to be part of them. That's why.
I understand that, but I'm asking you a question. I'm not looking to, engage in this back and forth. I just asked you a straightforward question. I don't, you feel like you're getting frustrated. I mean, I thought we were having civil conversation. I'm sorry if you're getting frustrated by it. I'm trying to solve these problems, but everybody seems to interrupt me and not let me finish my sentence and get 2 words out. So, I think I have just as much say as anybody on the board, I mean,
Moments ago expressed opposition to any bonding whatsoever. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth to say that you're.
I'm talking out of the Ford right here. This is where I'm talking out, right here.
Thank you. So as far as the second bond for $5.5 million, where are the folks in this room at? You
I'm
okay with
opposed to it.
Yeah, I know you are. Thank you very much. I talked about the folks in the room. You had an opportunity to speak.
I'm in the room.
You are not in the courtroom.
I am certainly in that courtroom.
On Zoom.
Shit. Can we move forward here?
And the question is about why do people get frustrated? It's inane comments like
Yeah,
that.
I see what Rick Ruzniak's hand signaling over there. I'm not supposed to get upset about that. Brian Kraus gives the cuckoo bird thing about Barb, but we're not supposed to get upset about that.
I think you should be muted. This is carrying on.
Mute me, you'll break the law, Rick. Mute me and you'll break the law. I have a freedom of speech to speak at these meetings. I'm the elected official as you, then I can mute you, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Councilman Thompson, you're up.
I know you mentioned earlier about comments from the audience,
Mhm.
whoever's left. Does anybody have any input? I'd like to hear from anybody if we get to that
Great
moment.
question. On the agenda, what is now 10:07 PM, we are on the item sewers and highway infrastructure needs.
Councilmember Thompson, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting. Could I get a second, please?
I thought we were here to solve problems.
Well, we're not getting anywhere. I'm getting insulted. You're insulting me. I'm not going to sit here and let you insult me. Brian, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the supervisor.
Hold on, let Councilmember Jazinski finish whatever. he's-
Please, don't talk out of turn like you tell me. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I mean, let me, I allot you the decency. I expect the same in return,
You don't. Continue.
I disagree. We can beg to differ, and that's okay. That's what, debate is. So, but I just don't think raising taxes is the right method of doing this. I think we could have gotten something done, but the all or nothing, way of doing things is not the right thing to do. I think, where is your compromise? I want to hear some compromise. I love the idea of you saying, let's not bond to do the paving and, use the reserve funds. I'm on board with that. Let's do it. I mean, it's 10-10. Let's at least agree on that. Otherwise, let's adjourn the meeting because we're going nowhere.
We have agreement on the sanitary bond. We made some.
So I had a motion on the floor. Could I get a second?
And thank you guys for that. We were talking drainage and we're nearly at a solution on that. And then we could circle back on the paving bonding. If there's a request of the majority of the board to adjourn this meeting without finishing this work, where's the second? There's a motion. Is there a second to abruptly adjourn the meeting?
Going once, going twice.
Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Councilmember Pilarski, you're recognized next, and I don't know if I heard anybody down here. Please let me know if you want to be recognized, but go ahead.
All right, so
I have all night. I mean,
I'm here all night too.
we got work to do here.
So we all figured out the sanitary piece. We're making
Yeah.
good progress. Let's continue that momentum here, all right? So sanitation's good. Drainage, do we want to take out of the highway fund or bond the whole thing or bond part of it?
Maybe a consideration like we did with the other 500,000? And then bond 5?
Hey,
And is that to include some paving for 500,000 also? So we're taking 1 million out of highway in total? Is that what we're thinking?
well, I think what I had mentioned before, and we don't have to do it, is to do this bond at the straight 5.5. Get 1 million out of highway for some paving this year. Let them decide what they want to do in terms of phases. That million plus the state money gives them 1.6 million out of 2.9. They can get 2 full phases of work done. Even one of the more expensive ones if they so chose. That was my thinking, but if we did 500,000 there and just 500,000 on roads, they might not be able to do more than 1 phase.
Yeah, I just don't
And
want
it's gonna
to,
be more expensive down the
I
road.
just don't want to take over 1 million out of highway. I don't care where
Yeah.
it goes, whether it's the drainage or the paving. We can get more bang for our buck in the
Mhm.
paving piece by doing your recommendation, but I don't want to go over 1 million with those 2 coupled together.
I hear you on
And
that.
bond the
So
other piece, what's left of the drainage or whatever route. I get, we're not gonna bond the paving. I'm okay with that. These guys says they'll figure it out. They were ready to bond with 0 or pave with 0, but I
Yeah.
think giving them some resources to pave, we'll get a product done by the end of the summer.
we'll get some real progress.
Yeah.
And it's-
So I do like that idea.
Okay, Councilmember Thompson, you're recognized.
Mark, question for you. So storm sewer upgrades, everything in that list there,
Yes,
is that connected to, the roads that we're paving, where it says, streets have drainage and sanitary sewer improvements?
exactly, Councilmember Thompson. Yeah, so the red dots you see on that paving list, that's in conjunction with the drainage list, correct? Yes, yep,
So it's that list and the sanitary side.
correct, yes, yep.
Okay.
So what are we thinking? With that in mind, do you want to go ahead with the bond at a full 5.5 or use 500,000 on highway? Like, where's the appetite?
I like the 5.5 and then a million for paving.
Yeah, are we all right with that?
Well,
No.
I guess going back
Noted,
to,
thank you.
you know, these items on the storm sewer system upgrades are going to be, the life of these are going to be everybody's life in this room and our
Mhm.
children. So I think, we should use some of those reserves for that, more than just 1 million, obviously not the entire thing. But, like everybody has mentioned, the reserve funds are supposed to be used for projects that have longevity such as this.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm in favor for using more of the reserve funds for that.
Yeah, with a highway related drainage, right? Or,
On this front page, the storm sewer system upgrades. the
Yes.
yeah,
Highway
from
fund.
highway fund.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
Thoughts?
would you support, so let's say for sake of argument, 1 million in the drainage out of the highway fund. What about paving then? Bond any or bond none?
That goes back to, what I mentioned earlier, as far as I think it's important to do what we can, after hearing everything tonight, to get the sewers taken care of, and then the sewer, or the streets will follow.
Yeah.
Because that seems to be the order of importance I think
The-
everybody's heard of.
And again, I agree with that sentiment. I mean, and that's why in my recommendation initially, I was like, let's keep our sewer bonding, let's rediscuss the bonding for sewers that got defeated. There's not an overlap really from the sewer work here with the road paving here. So that's, I'm seeing a little bit of a disconnect there, that the roads will follow, but you know, we're talking, the biggest trunk is in backyards, and there's no roads covering them. So if we do that, it's not like there's gonna be roads that are gonna get paved later. I don't know when the Kemp neighborhood was last paved. Maybe close to 2015, when those dead ends were done around
Correct.
Central and Southern, you know?
Yes, right.
So, I mean, if the direction we're going is no money at all besides the state grants for paving, I understand. I just think that's a mistake, and we're only hurting our town in the long run by not taking care of at least 2 of these phases this year. That's why I'm proposing that if we take money out of reserves, it should not be for this highway bond. It should be to deal with some of these roads. And again, we'll leave it to the folks there to deal with the roads that they don't have enough money for. If that's the decision we're reaching, I can go along with that.
Well, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, all these ones that I mentioned earlier with the sewer replacement, those are gonna have to be repaved no matter what.
Correct. Yes,
We're just not gonna patch a strip.
correct, right. We'll patch the strip, it'll get us through winter, it will need to be addressed in 2025, absolutely.
And we're wasting the cost of that strip we've done.
Well, we'll do full depth binder on that, so again,
Which one are you talking
You know,
about? Mark, which one are you talking about getting us through?
I was referring to Jerry's comment on the drainage aspect, so the northern neighborhood, the Beal neighborhood, the Kemp neighborhood, areas that we would do the drainage improvements, we would have to patch the trenches to get us through till next year.
Oh, okay, so you're not talking about winter next year, you're talking about winter this year?
No, I'm talking about the winter of 24 and the 25.
Winter's over.
Right, that's where I was confused, so I thought he was referring to next year.
Okay, it's next winter.
So there was a proposal to do $500,000 highway for this, for drainage work. I mean, is that where the board majority is on this? Or are we gonna go to straight bond? I know it's the same question again. I'm looking for a clear answer on this.
Supervisor, I'll save your time. I'm a no, 100% hard line no on any bonding, so we can, 1 o'clock in the morning, 5 Thursday next week, no.
I appreciate that. I was asking the folks in the room, and, you know, thank you. You've been heard on that.
I'd still rather go with the bonding for the simple reason, God help us, if there's something unforeseen, we're gonna be in trouble.
Jerry, the roads aren't that bad in this town. I mean, I looked at the Facebook Live. I mean, yeah, they probably could use it, but I mean, it's not like dire straits. I mean, the ambulances won't have no problem getting down those roads.
We're talking drainage.
Right. I know we're talking about everything, right? I mean,
We're on the drainage topic this
This is
moment.
why you gotta be in the room, all right?
hey, I don't have to always follow your lead. I could talk about whatever.
You have to pay attention. You're
I'm believe me, I'm paying attention. I'm paying full attention.
Okay, so I see Vern's point, and my thing is with the drainage piece, I mean, when that's all repaired and done up, I mean, life is 100 years, we're Paul.
Of the pipe itself,
Yeah,
exactly,
100
correct,
years.
yes.
So no matter what that's bonded for, let's say, 20 years or whatever, 30, worst case, like, many are concerned, which is not the case, 40, you're still gonna, you're gonna pay it off before the life expectancy. Versus the paving piece, if we were to earmark $1 million towards that, and it doesn't make sense if it's a 15-year bond and it's a 10-year-old road, so I get that argument, that concern of many. If we could take that out of the highway fund, I would like to do that, but Vern's spot on, though, is this drainage is one-time cost, so that's what the reserve fund is for, is that,
Right.
so.
Right.
I see both sides of that coin there, but either way, I don't wanna go over $1 million for the reserve.
Okay,
If
I
I
mean,
could say something,
council member, you're recognized.
Yes, I don't know why it's such a issue. I mean, Brian Plarski, you had no issue when Linda Hammer missed multiple meetings and you never made mention of.
Council member, that's off.
Now, can I finish, please?
It's
I've
not
been recognized. Can I
topic.
please
It's
speak?
not finished.
I mean, he never made any issues about Linda missing meetings, but you know, I'm out of town working and I'm here because I love this town. You think I want to sit here at 10:19 and debate this? I don't, but I'm here because I love this town. So, I mean, you know, the swipes need to stop. You know, that's politics 101. That, you know,
You
that's
brought-
deflection.
You brought up a former councilwoman. I agree. The swipes have to stop.
Who was sick, by the way?
Hey, I'm not taking away from her. I never made mention about Linda missing meetings. But that's part of her ability. She's allowed to. Everybody on that board's allowed to zoom in.
Not recognized right now. We are almost there on this. I know it's been a tough evening. I've gotten a little flustered in all this myself. We're almost there on this. It feels.
So here's where I'm gonna leave this at.
Not recognized, council.
I understand, but I'm leaving the meeting because I'm a no. So no to bonding, no to raising taxes. Thank you for your time. And my words are no to bonding and taxes. I'm leaving the meeting because I see no progress. Have a good night.
Good night.
Maybe we should all do that.
We are almost there
We're
on this.
almost there.
We are almost there.
All right, now we can cross the finish line.
All right, hold on, I need a breather. So 5.5 million, do we want to use some highway reserves for that? Or just go with the full flow and do some money for the roads? Because at this point, with the rest of us, calm down.
Quiet.
Yeah.
So, I don't mean to put you guys on the spot, but we're here because we had something that was voted down and you guys weren't happy with it. I'm here.
Well, like I said, I had originally suggested 500,000
Okay,
on this, and then bond 5
bond 5,
for the shortest term.
yeah, it's, okay. That's, the short, we're talking 10 years, you're thinking, instead of, what was it, a 20-year bond, I think was proposed on this,
15 for highway, 20 for sanitary.
20 for sanitary.
Yes,
So
Okay,
if we went in a briefer term, the payments would be higher going, every month, right? Or every quarter, every 6 months, however often we pay.
Correct.
That creates a problem with cash flow. So I agree that we could do this on a shorter, if we do this on a shorter term, that puts pressure on the paving side if we're gonna do anything. So if we're doing it at a shorter term, we're looking at higher principal and interest payments to get that bond done sooner. It's not gonna leave us cash flow within the budget to do any paving. So if the proposal in all this is to do a shorter term borrow on drainage and do nothing with the roads, it's something we should talk about.
Remember, we have bonds coming off too, okay? Our payouts.
I think it was 25, I think it was something like 5 for next year. Mr. Prosecutor.
Dollar value on like debt service going down, and current bonds would be, it's going down about $400,000.
Well, I'd rather we borrow, if we could borrow at a 15-year term instead of 10, that frees up a little cash flow, it's less than 20. Do a 15-year bond. You guys think about that?
And that's with a $5 million drainage and a $500,000 highway fund.
That'd be for this it'd be for the $5 million borrowing, if we did a $500,000 highway reserves.
Yeah.
The question was brought up about the term of the borrowing, to do it 15 instead of 20.
Correct.
Right. So a 15-year bond at $5 million, everybody in this room okay with that?
I think if we can all get maybe a few different scenarios from Mr. Kraus saying, okay, $1 million from highway reserves and this much bonding
Yeah.
at this many years, and a few different terms. I'd like to see some different options
I understand that. We did have
instead
an
of
email.
just saying, hey,
Yeah.
let's do this.
We had an email
See
sent
what
to us.
happens.
I hear you. We had an email sent to us that projected that at a couple different rates. I mean,
Right.
from my vantage point, we already had that information provided to us. So
I mean, but now we're picking apart everything and, I mean, I think we went through the sanitary sewer fund, or upgrades, I should say. And we kind of came to a consensus for that.
Mhm.
Okay, that's, instead of us bouncing all over the place,
Yeah,
you know, we kind of came to a consensus for that. Now I think, all right, now let's focus on the storm sewer system upgrades.
Mhm.
And maybe see a few options for that, because, you know, it can be overwhelming, you know, we're making decisions on, you know, high number, ticket items, so. Yeah, you wanna make sure that, you know, you're making an informed decision and not confused on anything, so.
I
Again,
respect
you know,
that.
now that it's separated, you know,
Yeah.
we went over that and came to, you know, a general consensus on, you know, how we can move forward on that portion, and now I'd like to see what we can do for, the storm sewer system upgrades.
yeah.
And then I would call that progress, you know, we're,
So this one, it sounded like we can't get to a final answer tonight.
well, I personally, I would like to
I'm not,
see.
I'm not saying it was just.
Yeah.
I'm really not. You know,
My concern on that is, so I think we all agree 5 million for bonding and then 500 for, but we're now discussing the term, right? 15, 20, 10.
Mhm.
So,
Or 4 million in bonding instead of 5, you know, I would like to see some of those options.
Brian. What's the interest rate we're making on our money right now? You know?
I mean, the money markets are in the 4% range, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So and that's kind of where the interest rates, on borrowing are as well, between 3.5% and 4% currently as well.
Yeah, so it's probably pretty much a washout, I guess.
Well, I mean,
So,
certainly there's, you know, you're talking about dollars and over lengths of time. So, you know, I mean, it's not, you know, what you're earning and what you're paying is the same, but, you know, I mean, you're talking about borrowing for longer than you have the
no,
money in the bank probably, so.
as it's safe to say that even if, you know, next year, that interest rate may be higher or lower. We don't know that.
no idea, that's
You're
right.
right on the money, but
Yeah, no idea.
I mean,
nobody
it could go-
here knows
it could
what
be
next year's
3%.
gonna bring.
We don't know.
So. Should we revisit the paving piece? From the sound of things, and we're not gonna be able to get to a final answer on highway draining tonight. We need
The
drainage tonight.
paving, you mentioned earlier, we don't need to, we're gonna get some paving done this year, no question. It's just a matter of, you know, how much we can do, and I'm willing to bond to get that work done that's needed. But that's not something we need to know, say, tomorrow.
The paving aspect, 100% correct. That's not something we need to know tomorrow, because like I said, that's just to buy materials. Everything else is covered internally.
Yeah.
Okay, it's the drainage and the sanitary portion that is crucial as far as the calendar goes. We're already behind. You know what I mean? So, you know, obviously, like you said, it sounds like there's a consensus on the sanitary side. If we can, you know, zero in the drainage side,
Yeah.
because then I'm gonna request that I'm allowed to put our 2 main contracts under suspension of rules to at least get those support contracts out to bid. Okay, if we choose not to fund something, so be it. Okay, but I at least need to get them out to bid, so if and when we come to a conclusion, we can go to work. Okay, sounds like we are on the sanitary side, which is
Yeah.
great, because we need to go to work on the sanitary side. Okay, but I have no contracts in place. Okay,
So-
we extended the one till May 3rd. Okay, that's literally 4 weeks away. So even if I put that bid out at next Tuesday's meeting, we probably won't have a new bid in place before the other one expires. So I might come back to you guys again and say, can we extend it for another 2 weeks or whatever that window is, so we don't have a gap in support coverage out there? Okay, if that makes
Gotcha.
sense. Okay,
As far as highway drainage goes here, if we can discuss amongst ourselves, maybe instead of having a resolution up on the 9th, at the end of April, does that still get us to a place where we can do a lot of this work this year? Is it too late?
it's honestly, not to put you guys on the hook, we need an answer by the 9th. If we're gonna
Yeah,
get this stuff
and this
done.
is the reason I've been stressing it. I agree. We
Right.
need to,
Right,
it's the 11th hour, you know?
right.
And
And
I
that's
don't
why I'm
need to-
requesting to get those bids out under suspension of rules, so
The
we can
intent
get them
isn't
in
to
there.
pressure,
Right.
not to interrupt you. The intent
No.
isn't to pressure anybody. It's, you know, this stuff has been up for a month and we've had some discussions, and the reason we're here at 10:30 at night and I'm really hammering away at this is, you know, we got an obligation to either say yes or no. And we've had information provided to us on interest rates and all this stuff. We've had these lists for a while now. It just, we're at the wall. If we're not gonna do it, we just say no now, it's next year. If we're gonna do it, we could do it at 15 years, we could do it at 20. And then we could deal with the paving after. We've gotta make some type of call here. And I'm one vote. And it's a good thing that a town supervisor is one vote among 7. Town supervisor shouldn't be a dictator. It's good that we're having a spirited discussion like this, but we have to reach a conclusion. And it requires somebody to say, this is what I will do. And this is what I'm willing to do.
So we had these talks and, you know, when this work was provided to us, you know, that could be our fault too. There was not a lot of discussion amongst this board to get this work done or prioritized. 100%. That's the truth. Now, as we get closer, now you're hearing all the names of these streets that are getting paved. You're hearing all the names of the streets that are getting sewer work done.
Yeah.
You know, we were told that we weren't going to do that so that we can prioritize this, you know, amongst ourselves and not put it out to the public. So now somebody's saying, oh, you know, I live on Barber Place and, you know, now my street's not gonna get paved. So we're being painted in a corner to make this decision, but as a whole, we didn't prioritize to say, let's get this done. Let's sit down and not leave this room until this gets done. But now here we are at the 11th hour.
We've had
Forcing you to do
discussions
this.
about this.
But there's
And,
you have
and
nobody taking initiative to say, and sure, myself included, to say,
but-
let's sit down and get this done.
I mean, no, I mean, like, we're here right
Am I
now.
wrong?
We're here right now because the initiative taken by 2 council members to call a special meeting and deal with this issue after bonding resolutions that were up, that I called council members to talk about this. How often do you and I talk, Jerry, about it? I called you about this. I called Barbara about it. She and I talked about these. I think you and I talked the least about bonding, but in the course of this discussion, I did call you and ask about your opinions on this. It's not like I didn't try.
In all fairness, it doesn't
You know?
help the fact that when this was first presented to us in executive session in the back room, we went over it. And a council member walked out during that executive session, only to come back the next board meeting during the executive session. So we had to go over it all again. We wasted that whole time right there to do that. So there's time wasted. We say, hey, well, there's next meeting, and it creeps up just like that. And now here we are. I think we're at the final, we're right there at the drainage. I just think it's the time of the bond is what's holding us up. And I'd hate for us to agree on and say, hey, for the sake of argument, 5 million bonding, 500,000 highway fund. And then we come back in a week and we're like, well, I'm at 10, years and I'm at 20 and that's a deal breaker
Yeah.
then. And then we don't get it done, but yet we've given the thumbs up and says, hey, let's get this ball going because we can't wait past the 9th. So I think we should hash this out tonight or shoot it down tonight and say, hey, we're doing it or we're not.
And I would think 15 is a middle ground, and we do a straight 5 and use 500,000 in the highway reserves. What do you guys think?
Works for me.
I can go for that.
I like Barb's idea of 1 million and 500,000, right? That was correct. I'm not Okay.
Yes.
And then meeting in the middle, then I think it would be fair enough to say, hey, a 15 is a fair one.
Yeah,
As long as it's not 20, 30, or 40.
Do we have support for that or no? Not to put you guys on the spot, but it's you, Barb, and you, Vern. There's 3 already. The number's always 4, and we can walk away. If not, we always
we
say no.
need 5.
Yeah.
Need 5.
Need 5.
Bonding requires 5.
Gotcha.
So we can't make a decision on it.
No decision?
Well, I don't need to speak for Michael. We know he's a no. So it comes down to you 5
I think Ted,
Council
it
member,
was a no.
yeah.
Flat out
That's
no.
what I heard.
Yeah.
I think. I text him.
I thought that was cool.
I mean, you guys gotta do what's right. That's the gist of it.
All right,
We gotta get this done. It's gotta be done.
all right, so,
We gotta do what's right for our
Yeah, it-
residents.
And I agree with Councilman Pulaski, again, I'm not a board member, but again, if the answer is no, then it's fine, we just need an
correct,
answer.
you need to know something walking out of here, and that's
Correct.
fine if it's no, but we also have a couple residents I want to speak to. I would love to afford them the opportunity.
They've been here all night.
Correct.
Absolutely, yeah.
Holy, you guys hung out this late?
What's
I
that?
didn't even see you back there.
So we seem stalemated on it.
And that's fair, that's fine.
It's okay.
Respect it, yeah.
I think we basically dealt with paving that, are we considering any bonding on that at this point, or is that just done? On the paving side, moving away from the highway drainage to the paving.
All the paving is tied to this, isn't it?
Yeah,
Storm
we-
sewer system upgrades?
Well, yeah, I
Five
mean,
and a half?
yeah, so since there's no decision on there, there's no discussion on the paving?
Well, that's my question. You're not gonna pave most of those streets because they have to have work done, correct?
Work's already being done.
Right.
There are trucks over on,
We got it all tore up already.
So this 5.5 million that we're asking to bond for, we've already started working on it.
That's,
Is
that's
that what you're
not,
saying?
oh my God. So that's
Sorry.
okay, no problem, that's why I'm like that one. It's not 100% correct, okay? So we went to work this year as if it was any other year. Okay, what I mean by that is we established a paving list. We went out, our foreman at highway went out and they assessed the streets on that list. They surveyed the receivers that need to be repaired on that list. So we're starting to work on that, okay? So the equipment that you see out there where Rick's guys are, that's doing exactly that. So if these streets do get the dots on that map, okay? So they're on East Grand, they are on Westland. They're doing the drainage improvements needed on those things out of, the 120,000 that we had in highway. We use that money to start working on those drainage improvements we need to do on some of our streets. Okay, ain't gonna cover all of them, obviously, at 120 grand. Okay, but they went out there and started that already, as if, again, we wanted to not miss the window, with the weather being the way it is, let's get out there, let's go to work, because again, if and when things come to fruition here, we gotta be able to, again, our season's short. So highways out there, doing that. I have the contractors on working on the water systems. We have 3 open water projects, including the engines. They're working on that. We are working on 1 open ARPA project, and we are working on budgeted monies. We have 300 grand in our operating budget in our sewer district. So we're using that monies right now for the sewer repairs we already know we have on our lining jobs, okay? So we're out there working. That money that we have, it's not gonna last forever, okay? All right, so like I said before, there's 300 grand in our sewer maintenance operating budget. Luckily, the bid that we extended had language for us to do that work. We already had it in there, okay? So that's why we're able legally to do that, okay? So we're on the streets, we're starting our infrastructure program. We just can't continue if we're not funded, okay? So I hope that answers your question. We're on there already, being proactive, getting ready to go, basically, is what we're doing, okay?
I mean, I would like to get some of this work done here. I don't know if there's, it's tough to try and prioritize, but, 3 million, that alone is just one area.
Mm-hmm.
I know that that's probably number one of importance. Right?
Yeah, again, the needs are what they are, council member, again, so the Shanley area, that's a need, those are needs. It's hard for me to weight one need versus the other. Again, I would put, the 3 million on top because it puts us at risk, exposes us to liability, meaning the town, okay, where the other jobs don't necessarily do that. I'm not saying they can't, but they don't necessarily do that. That job in particular that you're looking at for 3 mil does expose us to liability, okay?
So this 3 million per temp, the 1.5, that includes some of the community funding. That's 4.5 there. I'd be willing to try and make that work. whether it be bonding or some,
So pulling a million then
Some
from
of
the
our highway
fund
funds.
and then bond the 4.5.
or bond 4 and take 500 from highway fund.
Yeah, we got another one of the items here, materials to support the daily operations. If we didn't give you that 500,000, you can't finish the drainage work, right?
Correct.
So, and then we got Beal, which we were on notice about. And the Galleria Drive Bridge. I mean, if we took Beal and Galleria Drive off, I think those are the two that, tough of a time I have, I think they could be taken off for the moment out of here to discuss the other 5 as the other 4 and the other 4.5, actually the other 5.
Yeah, the 1.5 for the CDBG, you're gonna be getting funds back from the community development.
No, that's funds on top of the 1.5. Okay, so, that is gonna fund the curbing installation on those streets, okay?
Okay,
All right, so that
but
two,
they have funds to do that.
that's correct,
without-
and it's been already approved through her public hearing process and everything we went through with Rachel's office, yes, yep.
So by rights, that should be getting done. So that 1.5, the 500 for materials for the department, and that 3 million for hemp. I think those 3 need to be together. That's just my opinion. I know you said you wanted
That's 5.
concrete.
Yeah, not to
Thanks.
interrupt you, Joe, but it's 5 of the 5.5. I mean, the logic you're walking through, I agree with it. And that's the logic I walked through that got me to this answer to how the hell do you pull anything out? You know, we got the remaining 500K, and the reason I was as insistent as I was on the remaining 2 is I was personally on Beal, seeing all the water on that street. And then with the Galleria Drive bridge issue, we've been on notice and we're gonna get flagged this year on it, you know? So that's how I walked through your logic, and you didn't finish it entirely like I did, but you got to that first 5, and I got there in the same way, like pairing the stuff up and reading it through. So,
For the summer can't leave out the catch basins and all that stuff, part.
Mhm.
The other job, if you haven't got that, you can't finish your job.
right, and yeah, that's exactly what Councilmember Thompson got too, and I agree, it's just, I think we're looking at 500,000, and the other, the 5 million, the other 500,000, it could be a different conversation. Maybe we do the other 500,000 from the reserves, and we were talking about this before, 5 million in the bond, 500,000 in reserves. Well, at a 15-year, borrow. You know, when we go to market for this bond, we do it at 15 years. So. Reached that point multiple times. Do we want to take a moment for paving, or where are we at with all this? Have we sufficiently talked this to death? I mean, we really do need a decision on this tonight if we're gonna do something. I mean,
But the paving again is for the asphalt and could wait
Correct, yes, we're not time sensitive on the
on
paving
that.
portion, correct,
But
yes.
let's get through this drainage and the sanitary and the highway drainage.
I hear you. So if we're talking 15 years at 5 million, with 500 out of highway
Right.
reserves,
Fun, yeah.
is there a desire for a shorter borrowing term with less bonding? What do you guys think?
And I propose that 5 million total, those projects. And, you know, you can bond 4 million and take 1 million from the reserves. Since we're not discussing the paving right now,
Yeah,
you know, if that works out, and we can do that and say, hey, you know, we can take another X amount of dollars out of reserves to complete the paving list that you have, you know? That's why I think it's important to go in these phases like
Yeah.
we're doing right now.
it's,
So I'm uncomfortable with that simply because I do not want to take over 1 million out of that reserve. So if we take 1 million now, I can support that, and then I'm gonna be 0 coming out of that reserve when we do approach paving.
it's,
I don't want to
What are we gonna take
deplete
out
the
next
account.
yeah, the recommendation, we had storm cleanup earlier this year that cost us a little over 1 million that we didn't anticipate taking out. If we're taking out 1 million here, I hear that proposal, we should take that seriously. we also have to go to that same pot of money on the paving piece. And if we're going to do in excess of $1 million, are we talking $1.25 million, $1.5 million, $2 million? At some point, you know, we're taking a lot out of that and getting that fund to 10% levels, 1 month or 2 of operating expenses. One more snowstorm could cause a problem, a crisis in a piece of equipment. I mean, it's, you know, Rick mentioned the condition of some of the trucks on the road, and the 3 months that we've been working together, you've had a lot of surprises, especially during the snowstorm with some of that equipment. We don't have serious machinery budgets here. We're gonna have to tap that same fund. I worry if we go in excess of even $750,000 to $1 million, that we're backing ourselves into a corner where we have no other options, where we're gonna have a crisis. And if some equipment breaks down, we're gonna have to be at the mercy of other municipalities to get us through some moments. And we won't have the money to buy immediately. You know, we're 2-3 years out on buying this equipment. That's why I'm grateful that we've been able to get some work done as a board to buy some equipment and get some breathing room on that. But, you know, this isn't, the use of these reserves isn't in a vacuum. There's so many other considerations that we have to take into place. It's highway barns burn down all the time. I'm not trying to be scaremongering. They happen at random. Every year there's highway barns in New York that burn down. God forbid, you know, knock on particle boards. It's not gonna be us. But if it
Our
is
sewer
us,
garage burned, just so you know.
what's that?
Our sewer garage burned
Yeah,
back in the eighties, nineties.
and that's,
Yeah.
it's things like that that are the reason we have reserves, you know? So,
Alright, then 500, oh, I'm sorry.
oh, no, go ahead.
Then 500,000, let's borrow, and then bond the 5 million. And could we see maybe the rate of payback at 10 versus 15? But do not go greater than 15?
Oh, I would agree not to go greater than 15, you know?
So before we walk out of the room though, like I said, my concern with that is if we don't have a solid one way or another on the term limits, that I don't want that to hold us up come Tuesday and now it's shot down
Oh, right.
because 3 of us
Yeah.
say, you know, one says no automatically. If 2 is like, hey, I'm stuck on 10 and the other 3 are on 15, that's shot dead in the water, even though we all agree for the dollar amounts.
Mhm.
It's a term limit piece.
Well, then we're gonna have to plan a little bit earlier for next year,
And if we,
definitely. You know, and the biggest thing, not to interrupt you, Brian. And what I'm concerned about at the next meeting, I don't want to hear this about not raising taxes. Does anybody really that's got an IQ over 23 thinks that we can still get by without raising taxes? Anybody? It's pure insanity to even think about it. I don't know what the cost increases are going to be for the next year. I haven't got a clue. Never expected them to be what they have been for the last 2 years, but we're all exposed to it. You know, and it's like I said, if that's basically the way we're gonna run everything and drive everything, you know, well, we're dealing with taxes that were put out 10 years ago at this point in time. Last 9 years, we really didn't have any tax increases. They were all under 1%. We never even come close to the 2% tax. And it's like I said, we are so far behind the times, it's ridiculous.
I think a lot of the hesitation, even for myself, is, you know, I've heard many times that taxes are going up this year, taxes are going up next year. So, I mean, what's the percentage they're going up? Does anybody know?
okay, it's to
And
be
what does
determined.
this add to that? So that's
But-
another reason to be a little cautious, because
So
It's $15.
It
I don't believe that, but okay.
Just tell it, it's the numbers,
Sure.
we ran the numbers.
I could appreciate your caution on it, and, you know, thank you for saying, hey, there's a couple projects that I think they can wait. You know, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we need. If we could talk about a $5 million bond and then, or a $4.5 million bond, and do $500,000 out of the reserves and just not fund those projects at all. If that gets us to do 80% of this work, why would I say no to the 80%? I don't think it's wise to ignore the bridge issue and
I don't think we can.
and Beale Avenue when there's been water on the street. That's my opinion, but if that gets all of us together on something, I can go along with that even. 4.5 and $500,000 of reserve use, and we just don't fund Beale Avenue and the bridge. What do you think of that, Vern?
I would entertain that.
So can we, for the sake of time and moving forward with this and having progress, can we have Brian Kraus give us a chart showing, hey, what a 15-year, bond looks like, and then what a 10-year at the $5 million rate, and then also at a, what,
$4.5
million? And then if we can come up with a decision tomorrow, just to say, hey, thumbs up, thumbs down to Mark.
I'm fine with that. Like I said, I don't want to be pressured into a decision.
I get that, and I respect, absolutely, it's not front, you don't see it, and that's why I'm not pushing to say, hey, pick break this second, we need to, but I'm not saying, I
Right.
get it, you wanna see the comparison, and I get that, and I respect that. So if we could get that from Brian tomorrow, at some point, but then have a deadline where we all just reply and say, I'm in favor of whatever, and maybe it's dead on the spot then, if we're all 4 different,
Yeah.
5 different areas,
I think with that point, I would motion we move on to public comment period. Everyone agree?
Oh,
Second
yes.
from Councilmember Thompson. Oh, yes.
I'll triple.
I think,
On the public comment side, then I am gonna proceed with getting the bids in place, okay, and if this stuff comes through, so we are in a position to do the work.
To move forward.
Okay,
Yep.
so I'll be requesting some waiver items on your end, so you know,
Okay.
okay, that works for you guys, okay, all right?
thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
Well, we don't have a sign-in sheet this evening, up there, but
Go, Rafael.
yeah, is there anyone that would wish to make public comment before we close the meeting? Dan Collins.
One of my questions here is gonna be for Crystal. In phase 3 of the roads you guys wanna repave, 9 of those 12 roads were repaved in 2015. And you
Can-
guys,
Can I speak to that? This is the,
Dead wrong.
anybody.
yeah, this is part of the problem we have with what's put on Facebook. If it's put on
No, no,
Facebook, you know.
I have a spreadsheet that says that these roads were paved in 2015. It comes from the town of Cheektowaga.
Okay, so those
So
sheets,
that sheet is wrong.
it's not wrong. If you look at the roads of Eastland, Westland, Kilbourne, Kajakwita Creek runs right around George Urban. South of that, there's about 120 feet worth of dead-end streets. Those were done in 2015. Mr. Hupkowitz can attest to it. You were out there, right?
Yes.
Why don't we finish off making this a little more informal? The paving that's recommended now for, let's say, West Grand, 120 feet of that was done. We were proposing 1,352 feet. That was done in 2011. Rosewood, over 1,000 feet. Midland at 1,415. Westland, we have 183. That's a short portion. 1165 on Eastland, 1215 on Kilbourne. So the creek divides that street where you have dead ends that are south of the creek.
Okay.
And north of the creek, you have the streets running from George Urban. They wrap around to East Grand. And then they eventually pour out onto Genesee Street through East Grand. So that sheet out there isn't necessarily wrong, but it muddies the waters to suggest we're repaving the same streets. There are dead ends, and then there's a longer portion of the streets north of the creek. If the creek didn't exist, you can put it as a single street straight through, and there are no bridges.
But there are sheets from other years that was specifically state whether it was the north side, south side, or east side.
The street in question says the dead ends. It says DE on the sheet.
And on the 2015 sheet?
On the
I've been here so
2015
long, I don't
sheet,
remember.
and it shows the footage. The sheets available to the board show the footage of paving.
For
at the longer-
2015. There's 2 sheets for 2015.
If you're talking about these dead end ones that were done with phase 3,
Well, I'll have to look at
so,
what the
but,
length of it is.
yeah, I would check that out. There's some disinformation on that, muddying the waters and
That's
confusing.
why I'm asking.
So,
It's, you
And
know,
that's why I'm saying, that's, in 15, we did the dead ends, and 11 was the last time we did these roads in phase 3 that are started.
because it really would be bad to dig up a street and still have 6 years to pay on it, and now you're milling it again. That's,
It's a fair point.
I mean,
Yeah,
you're still paying interest 6 years on a loan.
fair point.
Next question.
I just got one comment on that, if you mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, for example, Rosewood, Kilbourne, all the streets you mentioned, there's actually 3 pieces of them.
Oh,
Okay,
because of Northern.
there's a section that runs off of Central, there's dead ends off of Central, and there's longer lengths off of Central. by the St. Joe's Hospital end, and then
Yeah.
there's the dead ends off of George Urban, and then there's the sections north of George
Yeah,
Urban. So there's
right.
3 lengths, 3 segments, okay? And then on our street inventory list that's done by New York DOT, it's actually broken down into 3 separate segments, okay? And that's how we get reimbursed from the state in those 3 segments. So those streets are unique. When they were cut off years ago, they weren't named north or south or east or west, where they just kept Kilbourne. They just kept Rosewood. They just kept East Grand, even though there's now 3 pieces of them.
The piece going to St. Joe's.
Okay, all right, so that's why it gets a little convoluted when you start looking at
Yeah,
the DOT information, our information, everything else. I just want to point out there's 3 pieces to those streets.
Similar to
Is
the
it-
streets off of Beach, like Hemingway and all that too, divided by the throughway, right?
Correct,
Yeah.
yes.
all right,
Yeah.
Dan,
Is it typical to pave, you said 3 sections, to only pave 1 section?
Correct.
And then not do, say, the next one for 10 years?
Correct, yeah.
we got time for one more, or if you want to just direct comments at the board for another minute or two.
Look, One
Not to
one
cut
more
you short, but
question.
we gotta keep order.
It will be short because you're probably not gonna know the answer, and I'm gonna tell you what may be coming on this. The sewer districts, you keep talking about the sewer district, the town budget paying for that. Everybody in Erie County Sewer District number 1 should not be paying for any other sewer district in this town.
And we
So-
don't.
so you-
You're
you need-
absolutely correct.
And they don't.
We have to be taken out of the equation because we don't use that sewer district.
Right,
Right.
and you don't.
Right.
You're right,
So-
so you will not get a bill, this cost does
So
not.
that's going to be on just those districts, whatever.
Just
one
the
is
consolidated
there.
sewer district, that's correct.
Excellent. Just clarifying some stuff.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Anybody else for public comment?
Oh, my gosh, my legs.
Good evening, Ted. How are you?
Stand up here. All right, I'm gonna eliminate about 3/4 of what I was gonna ask, but I guess I just want to address the finance chief here. I think in the future, it would be helpful if you, because I get it on my little old phone over here, hearing these amounts they want to borrow, and I calculated the current interest rate for the different terms to see what the total amount of interest was going to be and the payments were going to be. I think that information would be helpful to all of them. Now, according to the muni rates right now, borrowing at 15 years is around 3.25%. 10 years is around 2.8%. Okay, the savings doing it at the 10 years, not only the interest rate, but the less payments is several $100,000 of less interest. So I think that's something to consider. And the other thing is I just want to bring up, sir, do you use New York Class for funds that are available here? Okay.
Yes.
Because you mentioned CDs and money marks, whatever, the going rate today on the money market through New York State that is fully guaranteed is 5.25%. So if this town doesn't have every dollar that's not going to be needed in the next month or two, if it's not in New York Class, you are ripping off the taxpayers here once again from a perspective that you're not earning the proper amount of interest that should be made on these. I don't know, you got what, 15, 20 million of reserves? And I don't know how much dollars are floating around any given time, whatever.
Maximum.
What's that?
You want to earn the maximum amount you can for us taxpayers.
Well, absolutely,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying, you got all these reserves that you say you can't use and you didn't want to touch and whatever, and I get that. I get you're not gonna spend every dollar. But right now, in America, you cannot get more than 5.25 on a money market or any place like that, other than New York Class, because it's essentially expense-free. And again, for New York State municipalities, all federally guaranteed, so. Other than that, it's been an interesting night, folks. God bless you.
Appreciate that, Ted. Thank you. Just as a follow-up on that, the finance director did provide the town board with some interest projections prior to the last meeting on what these bonds would cost us at different percentage rates. Anyone else for public comment? Stephen? You stuck it out to the end.
I got this far, might as well say something.
Yep.
So Stephen Nowicki, live in Kaisertown. I'm a homeowner. I pay about $5,500 a year for a 40 by 100 plot of land. I'm a landlord and a blue collar worker. I'm also a high earner. With that, I say, raise my taxes. We've left off infrastructure spending from 60 years ago and all the while pushed off maintenance costs and in the meantime, cutting taxes on large corporations and high earners like myself. Raise my taxes. At the time where most Americans believed our economy was the strongest, we had strong unions and high taxes for both high earners and corporations. All the time that workers made a fair compensation and so did the business owners. Board members of years past have put you in the situation you're in today. None of you in this room have made decisions that were made 60 years ago that are what's in front of you now, but you're nonetheless left with the decisions you need to make. I believe that taxes are the foundation that allows a developed and civilized society to thrive. If you look at most developed European nations that have a more equitable tax structure, they're spending a little bit more in order than we do. Fund these projects, please. Raise your taxes on people I spoke of. My field is seeing the same issues as our town is, but in our own perspective. Our electoral infrastructure is around the same 40s to 60s era, and the use of it is also crumbling. It's taking billions of dollars in public infrastructure money to keep our electrical grid hanging on. Please don't make this come down to a crisis before we have to make a decision. We have to stop being reactionary and start being proactive on what's best for our town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Don Friedrich.
If anybody wants to pay more taxes, nobody's stopping them. You want to write a check to the town, knock yourself out. I don't want to pay more taxes, but if somebody does, here's the pen, write the check to the town. So I've never heard anybody say they want to pay more taxes. Anybody does, nothing is stopping them.
And with that, I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Kaminsky's opposed. No, thank you all for sticking it out. Thank you, board members, for staying here. You're the second, we're adjourned.